Jay Christie here once again to introduce another batch of entries for the Museum of Twitter. These are entries 51 through 75. I'm going to keep uploading those throughout the week because I'm migrating over from TikTok, so please enjoy and look at the time codes to find a specific tweet. Thanks. On January 5th, 2017, Yahoo Finance tweeted, "Trump wants a much N-word Navy. Here's how much it'll cost." This is the Museum of Twitter, the show we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. So this is one hell of a typo. You don't really think about the fact that the B and the N keys are right next to each other on the keyboard until you accidentally tweet something like this. Clearly, whoever ran Yahoo Finance's social media at the time wanted to say that Trump wanted a bigger Navy, but that is not what they typed. And so as you can imagine, or you remember if you were on Twitter at the time, this caused a flood of jokes on Black Twitter. And according to this BuzzFeed News article that came out the day after, @JustSweetDawn was the first person to use the actual hashtag. It was a really, really important night on Black Twitter. And to help me explain it and explore it, because obviously I have limitations in this area, I asked two of my good friends to join me. Anthony Canton III is my co-host on the Marvel Cinematic University podcast, and Rod Morrow is the co-host of the Black Guy Who Tips podcast. Just a heads up that this is a bit more conversational than a normal entry, and also there are some tweets that we reference that I can't find a screenshot of because they've been lost because of a deleted account or whatever. Rod, do you remember when you first noticed that tweet went out?
Pretty immediately. Man, I was at home, scrolling the timeline. I follow Yahoo, and, Trump and the N-word being in the same sentence was not something I was shocked by necessarily. I was more I just remember laughing so hard, going to get my wife to be like, "You won't believe this," hopping off the couch, and we both I immediately just started making jokes on Twitter about it.
That night that it happened, I was watching TV, so I happened to scroll and I saw something that a friend of the show, Amin Al Hassan, was tweeting about, and I saw it and I was like, wait a minute, what the is this? What did Yahoo just tweet? And then you start to see the comments, and it almost happened immediately. It was like a tornado of tweets the rest of the evening. And it was just so hilarious seeing how instead of like the per usual, like waving the finger at somebody who tweets some crazy or wild shit like this, instead everybody just gave a barrage of jokes, which was hilarious.
On a BuzzFeed article compiling jokes, which is where I found the original tweet. Rod, you actually have a joke that was compiled by BuzzFeed. Do you remember what your biggest joke?
I do not remember what my biggest joke was. I made so many at night.
The one that BuzzFeed took, which honestly is pretty par for the course for BuzzFeed, is the SS dab.
Yeah, the dab was hot back then. Luke Cage was out here. So yeah, I do remember that.
But yeah, guys, what are some of your favorites?
Batty Bot reporting for the Trump word Navy. I don't want you to have to bleep it out. With the black girl with the army hat on, with the one tear strolling down her face like Denzel and Glory.
My man, 3 carry-on items. I remember him tweeting a picture of the singer Seal. It says hashtag word Navy Seal.
It was a really special night on Twitter, I can say as an observer. But I feel like the context of when it was tweeted, because it was tweeted in between Trump's election and his inauguration, and I feel like it was one of the first moments of like catharsis and like laughing about something where you all had bated breath, and it was something that was so silly we were able to kind of express joy. Not we, but people were able to express joy. A couple that I want to highlight and I want to hear your reaction to is gonna ask who all gonna be there before they go to war. General Nuck, if you buck, sir.
I'm finding my old tweets now. The only ocean we respect is Frank.
The commander's gonna say we're around the corner and still be on the dock.
It honestly was a moment of catharsis, but it was a genuine moment of like unity that we normally don't get on Twitter anymore. Like I think maybe the last big one was the brawl on the boat dock. I feel that was one of the last ones. So that joint was a great moment. The amount of people that found pictures of black people just on boats. Mm-hmm. just on yachts.
I saw one which someone said it was if it wasn't gonna be like the big pimpin' video, they didn't want to go.
Yeah, like it was just any time a black person had ever been on a boat became a meme that night. Man, what a great night!
Massive thanks to AC and Rod for spending a little time to talk to me about this tweet. The cultural impact of this tweet on Twitter is really that it's kind of a yardstick for how exciting a night is on Twitter. Like when Trump got COVID, a lot of people said, "Man, this is the most fun I've had on Twitter since the N-word Navy tweet night." And if there's anything to take away from this, I think it's that Twitter Twitter is actually unique in its ability to turn things like this into jokes rapidly. Because timelines are sequential and not algorithmic, you can tell when your friend makes a joke about a typo like this instantaneously. Because this really was over one night and into the next morning. People weren't seeing the first N-word Navy tweets 6 hours after they were tweeted, they were seeing them once they were tweeted. And to me, that just allows for a level of comic heightening that you can't get anywhere else. When a segment of Twitter, in this case Black Twitter, zeroes in on a thing to make a joke about, it's basically like a writer's room of 100,000 people, all pitching on the same subject. And that's just beautiful to me. I know Twitter has a ton of problems, but still, there's really nowhere else on the internet where you get that. Follow me for a new tweet every day, check out the playlist of every previous entry, and before you suggest something, make sure it wasn't originally on Tumblr. On January 1st, 2021, Colin Crawford tweeted, "Me and my friends would have killed E.T. with hammers, I can tell you that much." This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. E.T. is one of the most beloved family films of all time. The success of the film, both narratively and commercially, is in large part due to the character E.T. himself. And in the film, E.T. is eventually embraced by Elliot and his siblings and his friends. But what this tweet from Colin Crawford presupposes is, maybe he wasn't and was killed by hammers instead. Because although you learn to love E.T. throughout the course of the movie, he is undeniably creepy. So it's perfectly reasonable to imagine a group of adolescent boys deciding not to befriend this alien, but instead to beat it to death with hammers. And in a way, the joke in the tweet is actually more on Colin and his friends than it is E.T. Like, you can just imagine the group of adolescent delinquents that would respond to seeing an extraterrestrial life form by beating it to death with a hammer. And if you can't imagine that, you probably were in that group. Obviously, I was not, as you can tell by everything about me, I was deathly afraid of that group. And not to get morbid, it is a pretty funny image to imagine. Like, just imagine the E.T. puppet making all those E.T. noises as a group of 4 or 5 12-year-olds beat on it with hammers. And if you're like, Jake, why are you imagining that? Keep in mind what happens in the actual movie is that E.T. is lured into the house using Reese's Pieces, and eventually he is dressed up in human clothes. I'm just saying we're already in weird territory. As to the impact of the tweet, let's just say that a lot of people like to say that them and their friends would kill a lot of different things with hammers, I'll tell you that much. Me and my friends would have killed the chipmunks with hammers, I can tell you that much. Me and my friends would have killed Grogu with hammers, I can tell you that much. And the best one, me and my friends would have killed young Sheldon with hammers, I can tell you that much. Why is that the best one? Because the actor who plays young Sheldon, Ian Armitage, responded, "Wow." To which the original poster replied, "Oh God, young Sheldon, I sincerely apologize, King." To which Ian Armitage responded with a heart. I will say that I think it's important that the thing being killed by hammers is cute, because in my opinion, not to pick on this person, this one just doesn't work. It says nothing specific about you and your friends that you're trying to kill a xenomorph with hammers. Everyone's trying to kill a xenomorph. Except obviously corporate representatives of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, yeah. Like so many iconic tweets, I think this one has staying power because it is so perfectly worded. Also, I just love that this was tweeted on New Year's Day. Colin was like, I'm gonna start my new year off right. I'm gonna tweet a banger tweet about killing E.T. with hammers. And for that, I salute you, Colin. Follow me for a new tweet every day and check out all the previous entries. On January 29, 2018, Bianca tweeted, "You have a choice to go to dinner with Jay-Z or $50,000 cash. Which you choosing?" Corey quoted and responded, "Dinner with Jay-Z. 10 minutes of his time to pick his brain about business is worth a whole lot more than $50K to me." This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. As far as Twitter is concerned, this is the age-old question. It's such a meme-don and clown-don question that sometimes people will answer unrelated questions with dinner with Jay-Z. But let's talk about the prompt itself. According to KnowYourMeme.com, the first actual example of this question being posed was on Instagram in 2017 when an account named Hometown Hero asked $10,000 in cash or a 10-minute dinner with Jay-Z. And normally I would disqualify a post if it originated on another social media site, but I feel like the specific response from Corey is essential to it becoming a meme because it wasn't really a meme just off of this Instagram post, so I decided to include it. I also want to note that the dollar amount is already inflated from $10,000 to $50,000 because it eventually gets inflated all the way up to $500,000. But sticking with the $50,000 for now, let's talk about whether you should take the $50,000 or have dinner with Jay-Z. The answer is that you obviously, painfully obviously, take the $50,000. The reason why dinner with Jay-Z became such a meme is because it's such a stupid answer. Rich people become rich for multiple reasons. Most of them become rich because their family was already rich, but if someone's not already rich at birth, the reason they become rich is not something that they could convey to you over a short dinner. Because the reason Jay-Z is rich is because he was really good at rapping and then made a lot of money from that and then invested that money well. And you might be like, well yeah, he invested money. He could give me investment tips. But the thing is, he was able to make the investments he made because he was already rich from being one of the most talented rappers ever to live. So unless he can somehow instill to you over unlimited breadsticks the talent of rapping, he can't help you. In fact, a piece of advice he might give is that it's important to start off with a large sum of money to invest with. I don't know, like $50,000. And if you're wondering, what would Jay-Z say? He's actually answered this question about the $500,000 version, and he said, take the money.
You gotta take the money. What I'm gonna say? Yeah, because you got all that in the music for $10.99. That's a bad deal. I wouldn't tell you to cut a bad deal.
Now, what Jay's trying trying to say is that all of his financial advice is already in the music, and I appreciate him saying that, but I also would argue that if you just listen to the financial advice in Jay-Z's music, you still won't become as rich as Jay-Z. Now, a lot of people have imagined what the dinner with Jay-Z would look like. This person imagines that the only advice he would give is, "Chia, it's your boy," and "invest, family first." Apologies for the terrible impression. I love doing impressions, but I'm absolutely awful at them. The great Demi Adejuyigbe once joked, "I'm at dinner with Jay-Z, and he's just rattling off $10 discount Uber codes." Popstar Benny asked, "Fellas, what you doing if the dinner with Jay-Z comes to $200 and he makes you pay?" Friend of the show Dragonfly Jones joked that he would use his dinner with Jay-Z to ask if he said, "I'm a hustler, baby, I'll sell water to a whale," or a well. This is a question about a lyric in the song You Don't Know by Jay-Z. I did have to look this up before you start thinking that I'm a secret hip-hop head. Unfortunately, I am not. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. The people who actually make the argument that going to dinner with Jay-Z is more valuable than $50,000, or in this case, $500,000. This guy, Profit with Ant, says, "I'll explain since most can't comprehend. Dinner with Jay-Z is the better option over $500,000 because of the knowledge and expertise he has. He'll give you the blueprint on being wealthy and successful. His knowledge will be worth more long-term than the short-term $500,000. He adds, "The right mentor will guide you to success, shortening your losses and learning code. The right mentor is a cheat code, leveraging their experience and expertise, and that is priceless." And you gotta wonder what type of person thinks that a mentor is the most important thing in terms of making money, even more valuable than $500,000 of capital to start with. Let's check out his bio. Oh, that makes sense. It should come as no surprise that someone whose business model is saying that their financial advice is invaluable would also say that Jay-Z's financial advice is invaluable. And that comes back to an original point I made. There really is no piece of advice that a wealthy person could give you that would make you get as wealthy as them. Like, yes, they can give you tips and tricks around the margins, and if you're also wealthy already, they probably could give you more specific tips about how to manage your wealth, but if you're just Joe Schmo off the street, they cannot tell you anything that will make you rich. The only thing of value you would get out of a dinner with Jay-Z is a photo and maybe some inside info about that time Solange beat the shit out of him in an elevator. Follow me for a new tweet every day and check out the playlist for every previous entry. On May 18, 2013, Billy Ray Cyrus tweeted, "What to heck?" This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. This is going to be a quick one because it's just 3 words. Yet still, Billy Ray Cyrus managed to screw the phrase up. Because the phrase is obviously what the heck, but he said what to heck. Why did he do that? No idea. What was he saying what to heck about? Also no idea. For the longest time, I Mandela affected myself into thinking he tweeted this in response to Miley Cyrus and Robin Thicke at the one VMAs, but this tweet was actually several months before that. So if I don't know anything about why he screwed it up or why he tweeted it, why is it being covered? Because what to heck just became a phrase that people used on Twitter all the time. And I can't confirm that all of them are inspired by Billy Ray Cyrus, but I'm assuming a lot of them were, because who else says what to heck? This was mostly a phenomenon between when Billy tweeted it in 2017, but just last month someone quoted Billy Ray to react to how hot they thought someone was. Some other things that have inspired people to tweet what to heck: seeing Paramore in 2 weeks, how high def an iPhone's camera is, being so emotional tonight, and in a beautiful piece of symmetry, Lil Nas X and Billy Ray Cyrus collaborating. This poor soul Fiza accidentally said what to heck in front of her coworkers and asked, "What has Billy Ray Cyrus done to my life?" And I was curious if I've ever used what to heck in casual conversation, and so I looked in my text messages for the phrase what to heck, and I never actually said it, but my twin brother once did say what to heck about University of Florida football, which feels appropriate. And an essential piece to this what to heck lore is that this was not the only time Billy Ray Cyrus tweeted the words what to heck. Excuse these screenshots because Billy Ray Cyrus actually deleted all of his old tweets a few years ago, but here are some other times he used the phrase what to heck after this original tweet. What to heck? How's everybody doing tonight? Looking forward to the Teen Choice Awards tomorrow. Never dreamed I'd live to see 52 on 25. Crazy. What to heck? Thank Lord. Thank you Almighty God. Bless the fans who have stayed. At Noah Cyrus. What to heck? I'll tell you what. Happy birthday. That's what. The thing is, I want to believe that all of these additional uses of what to heck are organic. That what to heck is just a thing he says, that he doesn't know it's actually what the heck, and in all these times, he would be saying what the heck if he knew that that's what the phrase was. But I am a little uneasy, and I do kind of think that someone probably told him that what to heck blew up, and he decided to keep using it as part of his brand. And in my opinion, that's just disappointing. Speaking of disappointing, I understand he's done some skeevy stuff of late, and I don't really have the details, mostly because I don't care that much, but this guy did care a lot when it was revealed that Billy Ray was engaged to a woman younger than Miley Cyrus that he met on the set of Hannah Montana. He said that he would even stop using the phrase what to heck because of it. And I get that, and people are free to make whatever decisions they want in regards to quoting tweets, but in my opinion, you gotta separate the tweet from the tweeter. That's not something I really believe, it just was funny to say. The thing about the what to heck tweet is that, one, it's really funny to imagine Billy Ray Cyrus saying it. Like, I'm just imagining him looking at his TV, seeing something he doesn't like and saying, "What the heck?" That's great to imagine. But also, I think it's a testament to how granular Twitter can get when literally just the word "the" being turned into "two" can become a meme. And before you comment, I think the 4 question marks after a space is what makes it. You're absolutely right. That definitely makes it as well. But yeah, that's the beauty of Twitter in my opinion. If Billy Ray were just to text this to some friends, they might joke about it for a day or two, but literally he tweeted this, what to heck, and I am talking about it 9.5 years later. Now don't get me wrong, that's mostly because I have brainworms, but it's also because this tweet has staying power. Follow me for a new tweet every day and check out the playlist for every previous entry. Also, follow me on Twitter at @TheJChristie. I would like more followers on there because I spend all my time there and it would make me feel better. On May 12th, 2017, Mike Pence tweeted, "Outstanding afternoon. Quote, I've often said there's nothing better for the inside of a man than the outside of a horse. President Reagan. Hashtag VP and empty. This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. I know I said this about the last one, but this one might really be short because I don't know if there's a way for me to talk about this tweet without saying things that would get my account on every website in the entire world banned. I guess the tamest way I can say it is that the wording of this tweet makes it seem like Mike Pence and this horse got to know each other in the biblical sense. They knocked cowboy boots. The horse f***ed him in the Okay, that wasn't so tame. But I'm sorry, this quote just sounds like a euphemism for that. I understand that the inside of a man is supposed to be a metaphor for one's spiritual self or their soul, but it just doesn't sound like that when you're talking about the outside of something else. And in case you're wondering, Ronald Reagan apparently did say that. Here is the Instagram page for his ranch quoting him saying it, and from his ranch you can actually buy a blanket with the quote on it. Is the blanket big enough for you and Seabiscuit to fit under it? It doesn't say. Do keep in mind though that Reagan said it in 1987 towards the end of his presidency, so it's possible the next thing he said was, where am I? Why do people keep calling me Mr. President? Now, why did this version of Mike Pence tweeting out this quote take off? I think it's because Mike Pence is a strange guy. I know the current thing is called J.D. Vance weird, and he is weird, but Mike Pence was also extremely weird, but in a different way. There's how he allegedly calls his wife mother, how he refuses to dine with other women if his wife isn't present, as if it's 1957, and the time he wrote an op-ed calling Mulan liberal propaganda. Now, none of these things actually make me believe that him and Secretariat explored each other's bodies, but he does seem like someone who has a weird repressed thing going on. And so when he lobs this hanging curveball over the plate, everyone who already thinks that Mike Pence is weird is going to jump onto it. Like, you know you tweeted something gross when even famous people are quote tweeting it. Here, Adam Scott, actor from Parks and Rec and a million other things, quote tweets it and says, ew. And most of the quote tweets are exactly what you think they are. And the only reason you're not seeing them is because I don't feel like taking the 5 minutes to go onto an image editor and draw little lines over all of the bad words that I can't show. Okay, here's one. You happy? Now, I will admit, I am not an outdoorsy person at all. I did not grow up around farms, so I really don't have any experience with riding horses. So I apologize to anyone who's watching this who loves horses, who is like, yeah, Ronald Reagan worded that weird, but it is really gratifying to ride a horse. I just feel like you should be able to talk about how gratifying your hobby is without making it sound like you did something that's a crime in every state except for Hawaii, New Mexico, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Follow me for a new tweet every day, check out the playlist for every previous entry, and consider following me on Twitter at @TheJChristie if you're still on that site. On October 5th, 2012, Cardell Jones tweeted, why should we have to go to class if we came here to play football? We ain't come to play school. Classes are pointless. This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. It's Sports Tweet Saturday, and it's week 1 of the college football season, and if you thought the first college football related tweet featured on this series was not going to be the Cardell Jones tweet, you've never met Jake Christie. Because this tweet is incredibly funny, and I also think it says everything you need to know about college football. And in order to understand this tweet, you just need to know a couple simple facts. Cardell Jones was a quarterback at the Ohio State University when he tweeted this, and for tweeting this, he was actually suspended for a game. Ohio State took it very seriously, and he was ridiculed in the media, and he was basically put through the ringer. The person who showed this tweet to me was my older brother, Kevin. Kevin was and is a huge college football fan, but also finds the whole enterprise ridiculous like I do, so we decided to get on a Zoom call and discuss this tweet and everything it meant. Do you remember when you first saw it? I mean, were you aware of him as a person before this tweet?
No. I also probably wasn't that aware of him even after the fact, because he was a redshirt, so he wasn't even playing. And it was I think 2 years before he even ended up playing. So yeah, I literally had no idea who the hell he was.
I think you just came to me and said, did you see that there's a quarterback at Ohio State who said that, we didn't come to play school, classes are pointless? And much like I do today, I thought it was extremely funny.
Oh, it's amazing. It's one of those perfect combinations of it gets people to clutch their pearls because it's something that a lot of people want to take seriously, like college athletics. And then it's just funny. It was also perfectly he knew what he was doing. We didn't come to play school, and then classes are in all caps pointless. It's just fantastic.
And I actually was doing some research on this today, and I want to hear what your opinion on this is. He says that apparently he tweeted it because he got a B on a sociology exam.
Now, obviously, I think that'd be great. I do feel like, considering his coach was Urban Meyer at the time,
Yeah.
that definitely feels like a little bit of a PR thing. Because I remember they had to like run him through like all of these things where he had to give statements about how athletics is important, and Urban Meyer said, they don't tolerate things like that, which is a joke in and of itself.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I did also think the classes were pointless, so
Yeah.
I think that's why I liked it. That's why it resonated so much with me, because it was finally someone speaking out for guys in college who don't want to be in college.
But did you see his graduation photo?
Yes, I did. He's got the tweet on the cap.
Yep, he says on his cap, it says, "Someone once said we ain't come here to play school." And I think I want to talk about is the truth in the statement, "We ain't come here to play school," because like no one actually believes that they're there to play school.
No, I think once again, I think like that's my favorite part about it, is that he just said the thing. Just the amount of people who were like, this is just disgraceful. All the different things that people say.
Yeah.
But because obviously there's a lot of money involved in making it seem like they're student athletes. Now, obviously they get paid, but I loved it because he was he was right. I mean, look, Ryan Lochte went to the same college as I did. There's no way he did not come to swim school.
It is notable that he was suspended for a game and was basically put through the ringer, was made to apologize like he committed a crime, in comparison to some of the suspensions that players at certain schools, Georgia, get when they commit actual crimes. Like, it's just funny to look
You don't
at.
even have to go that. You can go to the suspensions that players didn't get when they commit actual crimes, like murder at the University of Florida.
Of course.
It's crazy, crazy how Urban Meyer, apparently, he doesn't draw the line at murder. He draws the line at going to class but being upset about it.
And then when Cardale Jones became the hero after, they had two quarterbacks get injured, I know you know this, but I'm explaining for the audience, and he had to come in the playoffs and they won the national title. To me, that was like a storybook moment.
Well, I think it's the whole thing of he tweets this as a redshirt. So he basically was not doing anything at the time when he tweeted and got suspended. Then he comes in his redshirt freshman year. He does not really play. He's a backup quarterback. Then his redshirt sophomore year, it took both other quarterbacks to get hurt for him to come in. And so it's like this guy tweets this thing, and like 99.9% of the time, I think he just ends up being a bit. He's just a tweet. But then the fact that not only does he come in, he shows out and wins the national title, and then goes into the next year as their starting quarterback. It's one of those like, oh, wait a minute. This is we didn't come to play school game. Like, I think that's what makes it special, is it was a long enough time that you didn't remember who tweeted it. And then we all kind of had a moment of like, holy shit, that's the classes are pointless guy. And he was absolutely right, because he killed him. He was fantastic. He beat Alabama. That used to mean something.
Thank you, Kevin, for your input on this, and for being a good older brother and whatnot. The one thing I want to mention before I go is that this tweet is often referenced whenever there's a story about football players not going to class or not doing well in school. Like here on the statistic that only 41% of Georgia football players graduate, the Cardale Jones tweet was referenced. Or when Joe Burrow said that he didn't know most other students at LSU because he took only online classes, someone said, insert Cardale Jones tweet. And if you're wondering how I manage the cognitive dissonance of both thinking that the idea of a student athlete in a sport as profitable as football is ridiculous, and also enjoying college football, the answer is simple. Very carefully. Follow me for a new tweet every day and check out the playlist for every previous entry. On May 2nd, 2023, Later Undulator tweeted, "In the strip club, straight up jorking it. And by it, haha, well, let's just say, my peanuts." This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. I am once again doing the most requested tweet, so I expect handwritten thank you notes in the mail. I am, of course, kidding. I don't want any of you to know where I live. But yes, many of you wanted me to talk about this tweet, and it's very clear why. Like, I don't even have that much insightful to say about it. Is it insightful to say, it's funny because he says jorking instead of jerking? To be clear, it is funny that he does that, but that's an observation anyone could make. I think the random periods make it very funny. It's clearly supposed to be read like someone who doesn't know anything about sex talking about sex. Like, he's mimicking terms he's heard other people say. So he says stripped club, and jorking, and peanuts. He's just 1 degree off from the actual word. And there's the whole element of him being coy, saying, and by it, haha, well, let's just say. Like, once again, he's imitating the way that he's heard other people talk about sex. And I just want to say, I don't think that Later Undulator was thinking about all of these things when he typed out this post. I'm just an annoying nerd who explains why what he came up with naturally is funny. And as you all well know, because you use TikTok and you keep telling me I have to do this tweet was iterated on A lot. Like I once said in a previous episode, finding examples for this one was like trying to find hay in a haystack. Like, there's a ton of hay in front of you, but how do you pick a specific piece of hay? Now, multiple sources tell me that a key part of this tweet becoming popular was the words of it being converted into the title text of an episode of Neon Genesis Evangelion. And the thing is, I definitely knew it was pronounced Evangelion with a hard G and didn't have to look it up. It also gained traction with people sending it as private messages through various apps and taking screenshots. And the reason it took off as a meme instead of just the one screenshot of the tweet is that it's very versatile. You can use just one of the 3 words, you can replace other words, you can apply to other situations. You can do things like Chango Chutney, who tweeted, espresso voice, "I'm jorking late, and by it I mean peanuts." In this situation, stripped club is replaced with TARDIS to explain why the doctor is pushing and pulling something rapidly. And there are a ton of parodies replacing words that sound like peanuts or jorking. For example, in the wine bar, straight up uncorking it. And by it, haha, well, let's just say, my pinos. Or someone was reading about mushrooms in a textbook and said, in the forest, straight up jorking it, and by it, haha, well, let's just say, my hairy panis. In a strange way, the original tweet opened it up for any word that sounds even vaguely like peanuts to then become a punchline. Like this wine called Pingus, which is a little bit of a silly name, but isn't anything to write home about. Pingus becomes a punchline because of the original tweet. And I'm not really engaging with what the tweet's actually saying because it's all self-explanatory. I don't need to spell out for you what he is saying he is doing in the stripped club. And for the record, you shouldn't do that at the stripped club. Those women are professionals and they deserve your respect. But yeah, like I was saying earlier, the humor here is how juvenile it is. He's not actually talking about a real thing that he's doing. This honestly sounds like a text you would get from your friend who lied about having a girlfriend in Canada. Like, hey man, my uncle took me to the stripped club, and I'm jorking it there. And when spelled out like this, it's completely hilarious. I get why you all requested it, and I know it's had a major life on TikTok, but honestly, I don't get it at all. I watched a bunch of different montages set to different music of people looking hot or whatever, and the captions all said this, and I don't really understand why. So rather than condescend to you about stuff you understand better than me, I'll just smile along and say, you know what, I really like that for you. And I can't believe it didn't occur to me before, but as I'm just wrapping up this video, I had the thought, wait, I wonder if someone has done a parody of this, but with the name of Michael Penix Jr., the new quarterback for the Falcons, and thank God they have. Follow me for a new tweet every day and check out the playlist for every previous entry. On September 26, 2019, Afraid of Wasps tweeted, guy who has only seen The Boss Baby watching his second movie. Getting a lot of Boss Baby vibes from this. This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. This tweet may specifically be referring to the 2017 animated comedy The Boss Baby, but it really is universal. To be clear, it is very funny to imagine a person who has only seen The Boss Baby and sincerely saying, I'm getting Boss Baby vibes from this, about another movie. But on top of that, which is definitely a major part of this tweet's success, it gets to a larger truth. Because who among us hasn't had the experience of having to listen to someone with extremely limited expertise on the subject opine on that subject just based on the tiny sliver of expertise they think they have. This comes up for me personally all the time. I co-host a show about mostly Marvel movies, but basically all franchise movies called Marvel Cinematic University, and one of the reasons I like to do that show is because I have a much wider palette of movies than most people who watch comic book movies, and it never ceases to piss me off when I see people talking about comic book movies as if no other movies exist. Like here, where this person is earnestly saying that they think that the scene in Deadpool and Wolverine, where Wolverine is up on an X-Cross in a field of skulls, is an homage to Zack Snyder, instead of the literal comic book panel it is aping. Like, I'm not trying to go letterbox for letterbox with this person, but the only way you could reach this conclusion is if you have a very narrow view of movies. And this is obviously not the only example. I was just picking on this one in particular because of the whole Zack Snyder thing, but also here's an example of someone saying that Cruella was like a Kubrick movie, or this person saying that Eternals was like Dune, or the phenomenon of even major critics comparing every piece of anime to Miyazaki. And I think the reason why this is such a widespread phenomenon on the internet, particularly when it comes to movies, is that there are people who want to participate in these high-level conversations, but just don't have the knowledge base. And so they sort of fake it with the knowledge base they do have. But because they don't have the full knowledge base, sometimes they end up saying stupid things like getting a lot of Boss Baby vibes from this. And I want to be completely upfront about my film knowledge. I watch a lot of movies for an average person, but I don't know almost anything about a lot of foreign films, about a lot of silent films, and so when those conversations are going on, I don't say anything, because I don't want to accidentally Boss Baby vibes myself. And if you're wondering if this phenomenon is only about movies, it is absolutely not. Look here where this person says that the Cybertruck is the most customizable car in the world, when obviously it isn't. The only way you would think that is if the Cybertruck is really the only car you know anything about. Sometimes they can be a little unhinged, where this person tries to make a point, I guess, about Casey Anthony and Brian Laundrie living in similar looking houses. And now the funny thing about this to me is, because I grew up in Florida, these are just like the most average, nondescript Florida houses of all time, but if these are the only houses in Florida you've ever seen, you'd get some Boss Baby vibes from them. And so yeah, I think within this tweet, there is a very important lesson that I really wish more people on the internet heeded. And it's that it's healthy to be a little bit embarrassed about what you don't know. Well, maybe embarrassed is not the right word, but you should be aware of the limitations of your knowledge. If you're someone, for example, whose media diet is mostly comic book movies, don't proclaim that a thing is the best thing in any movie ever. Just keep it confined to comic book movies, a thing that you actually can talk about with some authority. Also, if you mostly just watch comic book movies, I can't recommend other movies enough. You'll love them. Also, to go back to the original tweet, if you're someone who's only seen The Boss Baby, but you've seen it multiple times, you kind of are an expert on The Boss Baby. So if there's a conversation about The Boss Baby, you can talk about The Boss Baby. You just can't talk about other movies. I will say, though, that I think that Boss Baby vibes is thrown around a little too much. Like, I think it's pretty snobbish to throw it out anytime someone says something complimentary about any mainstream movie. Like here, I think that this is an unfair use of Boss Baby vibes. This person was just saying that this particular scene in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was peak. I don't think they were saying that, like, it's the best scene of all time, or, oh my god, the scene was amazing. They just were saying that they liked it, and I think it's pretty unfair to, like, squash them and say, this is Boss Baby vibes, you've only seen 2 movies. Like almost anything, accusing people of getting Boss Baby vibes from this is something that should be done in moderation. Follow me for a new tweet every day and check out the playlist for every previous entry. On April 17th, 2020, Chris Thorburn tweeted, Editor, you get those photos of Elliot Gould and Grover? Photographer, sure did, boss. Real fucking sexy, just like you asked. Editor, what? This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. Some things just defy explanation, like why this photo of legendary actor Elliot Gould and legendary Muppet Grover just looks so sexy. Like, I've been cutting off his arms a little bit just to make space, but seriously, this is a sexy pose. And don't get me wrong, Elliot Gould was a sexy man in the 70s, and this is back when Hollywood let sexy men look like real men, as opposed to dudes with 0% body fat who look more dehydrated than a package of Jack Link's beef jerky. But still, he did not need to bring this much heat to a photo shoot with Grover. And if you're wondering why Elliot Gould and Grover were posing on TV Guide together, the Lost Media Wiki says it was for a TV special called Out to Lunch. Now, this special is basically completely lost, except for 24 minutes of audio. What this means is we don't know if this sizzling sexual chemistry was also brought to the TV screen. But I really wanted to know where exactly this tweet came from. Who the hell tweets about a TV Guide with Elliot Gould and Grover on it in 2020? So I reached out to Chris Thorburn and asked him to send a video explaining it and how he feels about the tweet, and he got back to me. Chris, take it away.
Hi, I'm Chris Thorburn, and I wrote the Elliot Gould Grover tweet. I wrote it in April of 2020, so we were early in lockdown at that point, so I was spending a lot more time on Twitter. I'm a big fan of both Elliot Gould and Grover separately. Grew up watching Sesame Street, and The Long Goodbye is an incredible film. My favorite thing about this has been seeing all the other versions that other people have made, other things that are real fucking sexy, just like you asked. And anytime something is sexy when it has no right to be, I always like seeing other people's different versions of it. It feels like it's not mine anymore. I always like seeing other people's versions of it out in the wild.
Thanks, Chris. And frankly, I love that attitude he has towards it becoming a meme. Because to me, there's no higher honor in Twitter than creating a phrase that is just part of the Twitter lexicon. And so here are some examples of things being real fucking sexy just like you asked. Stills from the new Hellboy movie. A Photoshop of a cat looking out a window. A drawing of a slice of pizza. The ghoul in the Fallout TV show. And one that hits home for me, because I was wondering this the entire time the show was going on. Magneto from X-Men 97. Seriously, the man's power is that he can move metal stuff with his mind. He does not need to be so cut, although I appreciate that he was. A major what if with this scenario is that the photo of Grover and Elliot Gould was not the only photo taken for this photo shoot. There were other photos with Grover and some with Bert and Ernie, but the editor of TV Guide was looking over these photos and said, you know what? I'm gonna go with the sexy one. And for the sake of the Twitter lexicon, thank God they did. Follow me for a new tweet every day and check out the playlist for every previous entry. On February 17, 2021, Azar tweeted, is there anyone even named Sheldon IRL? Leah Chinsang responded, my class turtle from 6th grade. Aaron replied, that's a turtle. And Leah responded, when God sings with his creations, will a turtle not be part of the choir? This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. There are some tweets that become iconic because someone uses a turn of phrase that you have to assume came from a piece of beautiful literature and not just a tweet. The rhetorical question, when God sings with his creations, will a turtle not be part of the choir, doesn't sound like it came from a tweet. It sounds like it came from a 9th century saint making the argument for the saintliness of all animals under Christianity. Like seriously, if I told you that a guy who ended up up becoming the patron saint of reptiles or something, wrote this in a letter to the Pope in the year 981. You'd believe me. But of course, that's not where it's from. It's from a dumb Twitter discussion about the name Sheldon. And this conversation starts from an understandable place. Azar asks if anyone has the name Sheldon in real life, which makes sense, because I feel like Sheldon is one of those names that is way more common in books and movies and TV than it is in real life. And obviously people do have the name Sheldon in real life. I know everyone who's a big fan of United States Senator from Rhode Island Sheldon Whitehouse is yelling at me right now. But yeah, if you ask someone on the street to name a famous Sheldon, almost certainly they're going to name a fictional character first, like the guy from The Big Bang Theory. And Leah responds that the one Sheldon she did know was the class turtle in 6th grade. And what people like Jess in the Wild here, who works at a nature center, have pointed out is that Sheldon is a very common name for a turtle. For some reason, it didn't occur to me the first few times I read the original tweet, but like, duh, Sheldon, Shell. It's a good name for a turtle. And Aaron comes in sort of like a party pooper and says that's a turtle. And on one hand, I understand where she's coming from. The question originally was definitely asking about people, but still, it's not like Leah doesn't know that she's talking about a turtle. And in one of the most pivotal moments in the last 5 years with Twitter, Leah doesn't just say, oh yeah, I just want to mention my turtle, or you're right, I didn't realize that they were talking about people. She says, when God sings with his creations, will a turtle not be part of the choir? And personally, I'm not a religious person. As you probably can guess by every single thing about me, I am a lapsed Catholic, but there is something beautiful about the idea of all of God's creations being on the same pedestal, all being part of the same choir in heaven. I'm sure that there's actual religious debate arguing this sort of thing, whether God values the life of all of his creations equally or if he values human life more, but personally I find this sentence to be one of the least toxic ways anything religious has ever been portrayed on the internet. And it has had quite a bit of influence, like here where this person says that Simone Ashley's character on Bridgerton would say this quote herself because she talks about playing with turtles by a river. On 2 separate occasions, people have tweeted about not killing an insect because of this tweet. They've asked, when God sings with his creations, will a wasp/cockroach not be part of the choir? When someone posted a photo of someone giving up their hat in honor of a dead rat, someone asked, when God sings with his creations, will a rat not be part of the choir? And because everything in the last month has come back to her, someone did ask, when God sings with his creations, will ray gun not be part of the choir? What makes this tweet stand out is that it is basically unambiguously wholesome. It's so rare that a tweet I cover on this series will be unambiguously wholesome. And what Agape pointed out just 2 months after the original tweet, sometimes we do move further towards God's light. Because once again, even as a non-religious person, I can observe that Twitter is one of the most godless places on the face of the earth. And so to see a little bit of wholesomeness, a little bit of holiness, is a surprising and beautiful thing. If I were a religious person, I would argue that this means that God is everywhere. But since I am not, I will say that we all can agree that it is funny to talk about a turtle named Sheldon as if he is a person. Follow me for a new tweet every day and check out the playlist for every previous entry. On August 9, 2014, Hoop Till I Die tweeted, y'all pray for my cousin Muhammad. Ain't nothing wrong with him, he just looked like a honey bun. This is the Museum of Twitter, the show we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. I'll be honest, I feel like I've done too many very recent tweets of late, so I needed to bring it back to an old school important tweet. And you might be like, Jake, how could this tweet possibly be important? It's just a guy observing that his cousin looks like a honey bun. And to that, I'd say, yeah, he looks a lot like a honey bun. Bald Jesus for real did a comparison side by side, and look at these 2 images and tell me they're not similar. As much as a human being can look like a honey bun, this dude's cousin Muhammad looks like a honey bun. And I think the reason why this tweet exploded, it has over 30,000 retweets, and this is from back in 2014 when that was not a super common thing, but I think the reason it exploded is because of the way it's worded. By starting off with y'all better pray for my cousin Muhammad, you think, oh no, I'm gonna hear a horrible story about this kid, how he has some disease, how he got in an accident, but no, it's actually that he just looks like a honey bun. And the face he's making in the photo is so sincere, it's just a sweet little smile. He has no idea that his cousin is going to absolutely obliterate him on social media. Speaking of the cousin part, there is some conflicting information about whether or not this is actually a photo of this guy's cousin. In 2021, Hoop Till I Die responded to the original tweet saying that he didn't know who the kid was, but then in 2022 he posted a video that's supposed to be him and his cousin Muhammad, so who knows? If that actually is his cousin Muhammad in this video, it looks like he outgrew being a honey bun by about 50%. What I can say personally is that I reversed image searched this photo and couldn't find anything older than August 9, 2014, so if this is not his cousin Muhammad, he didn't get the photo from the internet. What I did find is that multiple people have used this photo as album art on their SoundCloud, so take that for what you will. The main impact of this tweet was other people being compared to honey buns or other pieces of food. Here, there was this woman who people were making fun of the appearance of, and someone said that she was the mother of the honey bun kid. And the thing is, I don't want to make fun of these people's appearances, but I know if you hook me up to a polygraph test, it absolutely would go off if I said, this woman and that kid do not look like honey buns. This tweet occasionally gets referenced in the modern day, like people have used it to both describe Donald Trump and JD Vance, but it is a tweet that really peaked in 2014. And in a lot of ways, I'm very glad it was tweeted in 2014, because I know if it was tweeted today, there'll be like a 25-day discourse cycle about whether or not it's appropriate to make fun of your cousin on the internet. And to be clear, I'm not pivoting to being the internet has gotten too woke guy. It's just I sometimes wish that we could acknowledge that something's probably not great without having to have a massive discourse. Two things can be true at once. You probably shouldn't tweet out a photo of your cousin to make fun of him, and also, his cousin looks like a honey bun. I see a kid who looks like a honey bun, I'll acknowledge that he looks like a honey bun. I'm not perfect. Follow me for a new tweet every day to get the playlist for every previous entry, and yes, this is a Birmingham Stallions UFL t-shirt. I am very irresponsible with my money. On April 18, 2020, 2OC tweeted, "There's a reason Power Rangers are no longer relevant." Lickshot Lippy quote tweeted and said, "'Cause they killed all their ops." Has Spider-Man even got the Don that licked down his uncle? How you got superpowers but your uncle got touched? I'm a normal human and all my uncles are fine. This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. Look, this tweet is important because the phrase, "I'm a normal human and all my uncles are fine," is incredible. And in a way, as someone who does a podcast about superhero movies, I think it actually gets at a tension that superhero stories always have. That these characters have extraordinary powers, but more tragic things happen to them than people who do not have extraordinary powers. Because much like Lickshot Lippy, I'm a normal human and all my uncles are fine. Now, since I record these a few days ahead of time, knock on wood that they stay fine before this gets uploaded. But Lippy's tweet does make two claims that I'm not sure are true. Have the Power Rangers killed all their ops? And has Spider-Man never gotten the Don that licked down his uncle? I had to bring in some experts. Kevin Garcia is a comic book author who used to work as a researcher for Marvel and now makes content on TikTok about comic books. And Megan Hines is the biggest Power Rangers fan I know. She's the person I know I could turn to answer questions about Power Rangers. Is it fair to say, and I quote, "they killed all their ops"?
Somewhat fair, but not really, because there's a good portion of people that either got turned good or just slipped out of the grasp. But a good portion of them did get killed. The foot soldiers and like their generals and whatnot, some of them get killed. But there's like little instances where like they like magically come back for like newer seasons.
So, like, you can't say, you would not agree with the statement that, like, they have nothing to worry about anymore with their ops.
No.
Okay, so the original part of that statement is incorrect, is what you're saying.
Yes, yeah.
Is there an argument that can be made that Power Rangers villains weren't technically alive to begin with?
That is yes, because honestly thinking about it, because randomly Lord Zed came back and Goldar came back and I think it was Beast Morphers, like they were reanimated to come back.
That's very interesting, because I think what that leads me to believe is, like, even if they did kill some of them, like, the idea that they're done is going a bit too far. Now, I do want to turn to you, Kevin. You're a comics expert. Lippy points out that, Spider-Man's uncle got touched, even though he has superpowers. And he asks, has he ever gotten the Don that licked down his uncle? Now, obviously there are a million versions of Spider-Man, so how true is that point?
I would say in the million versions of Spider-Man, the canon event is almost always that the guy that killed Uncle Ben dies as soon as Spider-Man finds him. Mm-hmm. He doesn't technically kill him, but he scared him to death. So he had a heart attack. I mean, come on. But that being said, the big thing about Spider-Man is that he doesn't kill, right? But he has killed before. Usually when it's like somebody who there's no other option. Mm-hmm. But in almost all those times, those characters have come back because of comic books. So like he killed Morlun, a guy who travels the multiverse killing Spider-Man, and he's going to come back. He killed Digger, a guy who was like a zombie Frankenstein Hulk character, but he came back because he's a Hulk character,
Yeah.
I could think of two people that Spider-Man has directly killed that have never come back and will never come back. One's Gwen Stacy, and the other is Charlie, who is an ex-girlfriend of Wolverine. Both those situations, of course, Spider-Man felt very bad about, and neither one did he intend to kill anybody. But technically, I mean,
even from what I understand, and I mostly just know stuff through the movies, he doesn't kill the guy who kills Uncle Ben, but he's usually, the idea that he's still out there is not true.
Only in the Tobey Maguire version.
What's interesting about this is I think that means that basically both elements of the tweet aren't true, but it still feels like it doesn't add an ecstatic truth.
Yeah, but there's a crossover element of this tweet that I wanted to get to.
Of course.
And that is the character that I consider to be the original Power Ranger, Japanese Spider-Man. Because he's the first character that Toei had that was a young man who opened up a suit, called down a giant robot, got in the robot, fought a bad guy grew in size. They're even gray, putty characters that he fought called Ninders, actually, now I think about it. The thing about him is he would kill every single one of his guys, and many of them were fully like cognizant characters. They had full minds and stuff. It's not even like you'd be like, oh, it's a person made out of clay. But the way he killed them was kind of funny because he'd fight them. And then at the end, he'd pull out his sword and one-shot them. And they made a joke out of that when he crossed over the Spider-Verse. And Doc Ock asks him, wait, if your sword kills them instantly, why don't you just start with that? And he says, that's not honorable. So I'm like, okay.
One last thing I haven't mentioned about this original tweet is that it started from an argument over who would win in a fight, Spider-Man or the Power Rangers. And so, of course, I asked Kevin and Megan their thoughts on this, and here are their answers. Keeping in mind, I had to cut them down because if nerds can talk about anything for a long time, it's who would win in a fight.
Because there's so many people within Power Rangers, I'm like, that can easily match Spider-Man. But I would say Power Rangers because they can actually kill,
If you're going to go one-on-one Spider-Man versus a Power Ranger, I don't think they stand a chance, even though they are very powerful.
Yeah.
But Spider-Man versus the team, especially if he knew they were teenagers with attitude, there's no way he would fight them and win.
Yeah.
Now, Japanese Spider-Man, if you put Leopard on versus the is it Megazord? Is that what the big one's called? Put Leopard on versus the Megazord, given that canonically, everyone that Leopard on has used the sword against has been destroyed, he would win. Whereas the Megazord has occasionally lost. So,
I want to thank Kevin and Megan for hopping on that absolute nonsense Zoom call with me. And I'll get through the part where I talk about the impact of this tweet very quickly because I couldn't bring myself to cut out any of that interesting stuff about Japanese Spider-Man, and I tried to make the show under 6 minutes. And so this is going to go 7:05, 7:10 at the maximum. In a great moment of synergy, someone quote tweeted this original tweet with the caption, "RIP to your uncle, but I'm different," which is of course a reference to RIP your grandma, but I'm different, a tweet I covered a couple weeks ago. You know what tweet is popular when it gets misquoted years later, like when PBS Impulse 9 says, "How you got superpowers and your uncle got clapped? I'm a normal human and all my uncles are fine." I know I'm a broken record about this and I've said it in many episodes, but there's something great about Twitter where there's someone who just is great with words, who happens to be in an argument, and they'll phrase something in a particular way, and it might be an argument that people have been making for years, but they'll phrase it in a particular way that just sticks in the mind of everyone who reads it. Lickshot Lippy is not the first person to say, hey, if Spider-Man's such a good superhero, why did he let his uncle get killed? But he is the first person to word it like that. And for that, I gotta take my cap off to him. Follow for a new tweet every day. Check out the playlist for a previous entry. And if you're interested in comic book movies and shows and you like my personality, then check out Marvel Cinematic University. It's a show I do with my friend Anthony Canton III. We cover things about once a week. On April 16th, 2023, Scrappy tweeted, "This y'all beams." This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. It's Sports Tweet Saturday, and I don't think I need to explain why I chose to do this tweet today. There's an anniversary coming up, you understand. So this tweet requires a lot of context. If you're already a big NBA fan, you get it, but I want to explain it for people who are not big NBA fans, because I think it's very funny when you get it. So the Sacramento Kings basketball team was formed in 1923 as the Rochester Seagrams. I'm kidding, we don't need that much context. In the 2022-2023 season, the Sacramento Kings started doing a thing when they won home games called lighting the beam. It's exactly what it sounds like. They press a button and a gigantic beam shoots out of the top of the arena and goes into the sky. In my opinion, it is a harmlessly fun thing to do, which I think inspired a lot of joy among Kings fans, because the Kings have not been good for a long time, and they actually got good this season that this happened, so it was a very nice moment. And the night this was tweeted, the Sacramento Kings had actually defeated the Golden State Warriors in a home playoff game that was really close and was a huge victory for the Kings. And the Kings celebrated a lot more than a team normally would for one playoff victory. And that inspired a Knicks fan named Carlito21 to ask, "Kings won the chip?" LMAO, basically saying, oh, the Kings are acting like they won the championship after one playoff game. And to that, someone named Pablo Sereno responded, "Don't have room to talk," along with the stat that the Knicks had just won their first road playoff game since 2013. And as a Knicks fan, I agree he doesn't have any room to talk. Knicks fans act like we're the Lakers or the Celtics when we barely have a championship in the era of color television. And so anyway, Carlito shoots back with, "We not lighting no beams, idiot." And it is to that tweet that Scrappy responds with the immortal, "This y'all beams." And with that, he includes a photo of the Tribute in Light art installation that happens every September 11th in New York at the World Trade Center Memorial, where two searchlights represent where the Twin Towers stood before 9/11. And I do want to make one thing clear.
9/11 was a national tragedy.
But obviously the shock value of invoking that event in an argument about basketball and lighting the beams is crazy and hilarious. And smarter people than me could probably write a dissertation on how quickly jokes about September 11th have become normalized on social media, but even this felt like it came out of left field. But at the same time, it's sort of par for the course, because as Soundwave here says, playoff NBA Twitter is a lawless land. And it really really is. Other parts of sports Twitter are literally meaner than NBA Twitter, like college football Twitter is extremely mean because they're talking about 18-year-olds who aren't getting paid, but there's just a creativity in the hating of NBA Twitter that is breathtaking. Like, this started as an argument about how one team celebrated a playoff victory too much, and then it got to, your city was the victim of a terrorist attack. And because this was tweeted in 2023, I think this is good evidence that sports Twitter will really be the last Twitter to die, because there's just no other place on the internet you could have discussions that are this fast-paced, live, and completely devolved as this. And as you can imagine, some Knicks fans, not me, really got their feelings hurt by this, and brought it back up when the Knicks beat the Kings the next year. Now, I personally think that holding a grudge about a tweet about your sports team is absolute dork and loser behavior, but teach their own. Now, if anyone is watching this and thinking that this is all just trivializing a tragedy, that is true, and I apologize if that offends you. But the reality is, there's basically nothing that Twitter holds sacred. So unfortunately, I think we have to accept that if we die in a national tragedy, someone on Twitter might use our death as a joke about a sports fan base 2 decades later. And as you can imagine, as the curator of the Museum of Twitter, I would consider that an honor. Follow for a new tweet every day and check out the playlist for every previous entry. On September 8th, 2014, Neve Schulman tweeted, "Cowards make me sick. Real men show strength through patience and honor. This elevator is abuse-free. #respect. This is the Museum of Twitter, the show we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. This tweet stinks on its face, but when you remember the context, it's even worse. Neve Schulman is one of the co-hosts of the Catfish TV show, and he tweeted this the same day video was leaked of NFL player Ray Rice knocking out his fiancée in an elevator. And so Neve thought it was necessary for him the same day to go into an elevator and proclaim that that elevator, unlike the one in Atlantic City Ray Rice was in, was abuse-free. This is so important to him that he propped open the elevator door with a bag and a bottle of water. The phrase virtue signaling is thrown around a lot, and I think often unfairly, but this is what actual virtue signaling is. Neve logged on just to try to get points from other people for not being abusive. Did he do anything to prevent abuse? No, he just wants everyone to know, hey, I'm a good guy and you should like me because I'm not an abuser. Which is, of course, the bare minimum. To me, there's not even anything wrong necessarily with reacting to that Ray Rice video and saying that he's a coward and saying that real men don't need to do that sort of thing, but the fact that he cenders himself in this is what makes it so dumb and gross. And of course, because there's no other way for this story to go, people very quickly pointed out that Neve Schulman was kicked out of Sarah Lawrence College because he punched a girl. And this is not hearsay. This is something he admits to in his own book. His primary defense is that he didn't know the person he was punching was a woman, but that's not really much of a defense. I guess my thing is, even if you grant him grace with this whole situation at Sarah Lawrence College, if I knew that there was a woman on planet Earth who could say that I punched her, I would never make a post patting myself on the back for not punching women. And I'm sure there are some of you watching thinking, Jake, why are you taking this so seriously? This post has to be a joke. And I understand why you think that. Particularly if you're a little bit younger and you are not on Twitter when there's a lot more cringe and sincere posting. But this is what Schulman told TheWrap.com when he was asked about it. My post was meant to raise awareness and support for everyone affected by the awful abuses of domestic violence. He genuinely thought he was making a groundbreaking statement on violence against women with this post. And as you can imagine, it has been much parodied. I, for one, have definitely been in multiple elevators and looked at the security camera and done this. But here's Helen showing that an elevator is abuse-free. Here's Devin showing that an elevator is abuse-free. And here's a pit bull that somehow got into an elevator by himself showing that that elevator is abuse-free. What's more, posts that feel like they're men wanting to pat themselves on the back for being good feminists often get tagged with being a Neve Schulman elevator post. Like when Mark Duplass made a big deal of saying that men of all sizes should see Little Women in theaters. So yeah, I really want to wish this tweet a happy 10th anniversary. I can't believe it's been 10 long years, but in some ways I can. Also, if by some miracle someone could tell me what elevator this was at, I don't know if you can tell by the carpet or maybe by the bags he has, I really have no idea. If someone could figure out what elevator he was on, please let me know, and if it's in New York, I will go there and I'll film from there. Won't it just be me filming from what looks like a regular elevator? Of course, but it will make me happy, and that's what's important. Follow me for a new tweet every day and check out the playlist for every previous entry. On February 22nd, 2022, Kendracandraw tweeted, "Me watching some high fantasy shit. I would simply not be corrupted by the magical object. If it is actively harming you, why don't you just put it down? Idiot. Me, receiving psychic damage 23 hours a day from my phone. This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. Somewhat ironically, many great tweets are about how awful it is to be online. And this tweet from Kendra sums it up in a way that most of us can understand. Because we've all been watching a fantasy show or movie and been like, oh my god, stop getting corrupted. Your arms are turning black. Don't you realize this is bad for you? But of course, we all do things that are bad for us all the time. Specifically, looking at our phones for 15, 16, 17 hours a day. And to get the backstory on this tweet, like what specifically inspired it and how they feel about it being so popular, I reached out to Kendra. They're a comics artist and writer who is delightful to talk to, so let's go to that conversation. So Kendra, I feel like you really captured a universal feeling with this tweet. But I'm assuming that something specific brought it on for you. Was it a specific moment, a specific thing you saw on your phone that made you think it?
Yeah, well, the context of it is I had just been watching Lord of the Rings, and
Of
there's
course.
a scene in there where Pippin grabs the orb that he's not supposed to grab and goes like,
Mhm.
ah! And I was watching it and sort of, offhandedly was like, oh, if I was there, it wouldn't go down like that. If it was me, I simply would not be possessed by the creepy orb
Yeah.
that compels me to look at it. And then I picked up my phone and I began to tweet about
Yeah.
the scene. I was like,
Yeah.
it's not maybe I'm not as untethered as I thought I was.
Do you find yourself thinking about the tweet when you are like reading something that really makes you like annoyed, or you don't understand why you're reading it?
Yeah, I think it's a good sort of mantra to keep in the back of my head whenever I'm like, there are, a million things that are worth your time and attention, and some of them are even online. But it's nice to have a moment of clarity and be like, oh, I can just put like this drama that I'm like for some reason like deeply researching at 3 a.m. Like
Yeah.
I don't need to be a part of that
Yeah.
at all. And actually, I could just like go to bed.
There was actually, I think for the month of May this year, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go a month without reading the For You tab on Twitter. And honestly, it was a great month. I don't know why I stopped it. It was, because that's really an orb. That is an orb right there.
It is a void to stare into. Yeah, it's rough. And you get all sorts of like, oh, I can't believe that Stephanie said that about Brady. And you're like, who's Stephanie and Brady?
Yeah.
And then you have to like get into it, for 1,000 hours.
So other than the orb, are there any other sci-fi fantasy things that you think that you would not gone down like that?
I mean, I think any sort of cursed amulet, I think that I have a pretty good handle on, like you could wear it, but just like, I simply think that it wouldn't really be a problem for me.
Yeah.
Any sort of like cursed treasure, like I would not pick up a cursed pirate coin. But like,
no.
I think that that's just me. That's just like the way that I am. I think a lot of these things could be avoided by just thinking about it logically and like really stepping back and going, no, not for me.
And I think it's a risk reward thing because like I don't believe in dead pirate curses, but I'm not positive enough to take a chance. You know,
better safe than sorry.
Yeah, I'll say this: the ring, I don't think I'd be able to resist, but the orb, I'm like, come on, Pippin. Well,
it doesn't even look that. At least the ring is like kind of like ooh, it's kind of nice. Like it's sparkly, it's cool. It's on a necklace sometimes. It's versatile. Orb is just invisible. An orb.
Yeah, the orb, like, oh, I can see, Saruman. I have Skype. I don't need to do that. Why did I say Skype? It's not 2018.
It's none of my business.
Honestly, that's the thing when I'm watching those scenes in the Two Towers, I'm like, this is none of my business.
It's none of my business.
Yeah. I would say the answer is you shouldn't. But do you ever think about the fact that something you wrote is something that people return to and think about a lot?
Honestly, it's very flattering. I am actually a writer by trade, and like an artist and a creative. So it makes me happy that something like even a tweet is resonating with people.
Yeah.
It bums me out a little that people retweet it so often. I'm like, ooh, we're all really going. Like I think I tweeted it a couple years ago, and it just like keeps going every single year. I'm like, oh, we need a break.
The way that you spell out the sounds, I think is.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to ask you to say it because I'm, of course, going to say it. I'm going to read it at the beginning of this episode, so we'll compare. But is there any, like, was it just a random? Because it doesn't feel tossed off. It feels like you actually put some thought.
It's a very conscientious oog. Yeah, I think it's just, it really, like, it comes from a very guttural place that I feel is, you're not, like, screaming your head off when you're possessed by the orb. I mean, Pippin was, but again, I'm different. I'm built different.
I feel like it brings to mind like drool coming down and like a
just like
Exactly. I really want to thank Kendra for coming on. You can find the work at kendracandraw.com or at patreon.com/kendracandraw. The last thing I want to add about this is that obviously we're being stupid when we say that we would not be affected by these objects. Like, the whole point of a lot of these stories is that you need to be a chosen one to not be affected by these objects. Frodo is just not some guy. He specifically is uncorruptible. Harry Potter is basically tasked from infancy to destroy the Horcruxes. I think the reason we all see ourselves in this Kendra tweet is because we're not the chosen one. We're not the one that's going to destroy the evil object. The best we can do is limit the amount it corrupts us. us. Unless you're like Liz Harvey here, who thinks that because she can handle her phone, she can handle the ring. And honestly, Godspeed, Liz. Follow me for a new tweet every day to get the plays for every previous entry, and please stop asking me to do the Kira Imagine tweet. I already did it. It's episode 24. On October 1st, 2020, Rudy Giuliani tweeted, "The Debat. This is the Museum of Twitter, the show we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. Rudy Giuliani was once America's mayor. He was Times Person of the Year, and not even one of those ironic or negative ways. And yet, tying himself to Donald Trump reduced him to being the guy who tweeted, 'The Debat.' That's not to say that Democrats don't make typos or people not associated with Donald Trump don't make typos, but The Debat is perfectly in line with what Rudy Giuliani has become. The Debat is to The Debate as Four Seasons Total Landscaping is to the Four Seasons Hotel. And as a quick aside, that might be the funniest thing that's ever happened in politics. I think about it all the time. They said they're going to have a press conference at the Four Seasons, and the Four Seasons in Philadelphia was like, hell no, you're not having a press conference at the Four Seasons talking about the election was stolen. And so they scrambled and found a place called Four Seasons Total Landscaping that was owned by a Trump supporter and acted like, no, we always wanted to have it at this landscaping place. It's so stupid that that really happened. Now, unlike Trump's Covfefe tweet, I really have no idea what Rudy was trying to say here. This was tweeted a few days after the first debate of the 2020 presidential race. But what was he trying to say about the debate? Like, it would be different if the debate was literally happening then, and he was just saying, like, look, the debate. But the debate was a couple days ago. Did he have a larger point about the debate? Was he trying to say that Trump won the debate? We have no idea, because all he tweeted was the debat. In hindsight, it's not great that during the Trump administration, a lot of people who had the ear of the most powerful man in the world post like grandmas who don't understand Facebook. But even though this post was very quickly deleted, it was immediately jumped on and became iconic instantly. Like Stephen Colbert says, someone needs to take away Rudy's car key. And of course, a few days after the first presidential debate of 2020, Trump got COVID, which led people to tweet things like, Giuliani must be the debat Trump got COVID from. And if the debat was something that people just joked about for a few weeks in early October 2020, it probably wouldn't make the museum. But it warms my heart to say that before, during, and after the first presidential debate of this year, people referenced the debat a lot. Like Rachel Zegler here, who of all famous people in the world would probably be the one who would like this series the most, so if you know her, please show it to her. I'd love her to be a guest. She even said, wow, Rudy Giuliani was right. The debat. And the debat is versatile. This guy here used the debat to describe a debate he was having about diet sodas with a friend. So yeah, I thought it was only appropriate on the day of the very important presidential debate going on tonight that I cover the debat. Because if I don't cover it now, I have to wait like 4 years. And depending how this one goes, I can't be really certain that we'll even have a 2028 election, so I should get it done now. Follow me for a new tweet every day and check out the playlist of every previous entry. On September 11, 2013, Donald Trump tweeted, I would like to extend my best wishes to all, even the haters and losers, on this special date, September 11th. This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. I would say that this is one of the canonical Trump tweets, because it is a string of thoughts that really only his mind could conjure up. Like, you have to have the most aggrieved brain of all time to think about September 11th and think, you know what? I'm gonna make this about the haters and losers. And at the time, it was very, very funny. Don't you guys miss when the haters and losers Donald Trump was tweeting about were just Rosie O'Donnell, Bette Midler, and other people he met at parties in the 80s? Because once again, he wasn't really a politician at this time. He had made political statements, he had done the whole birther thing, but it's not like he was tweeting about his political opponents. He was literally just tweeting about haters in the same way that a rapper would tweet about haters. And that was very funny. He even did it for other holidays like Memorial Day. But I think what makes this tweet unique among the Trump canon, because he tweeted about haters and losers a lot, and there's another famous haters and losers tweet that I'll eventually cover in this series. But what makes this tweet unique is why did he have to say it on September 11th? There are like 5 or 6 days in the American calendar where people might be like, hey man, maybe you don't want to make this day about settling scores with your haters and losers. But the thing is, he can't help himself. And that is a thing that I see a lot of people try to deny or get around about Trump, and this is both people who hate him and love him. The thing is, he really can't help himself. It's in him to his bones. It's why whenever he releases a statement that seems normal, giving regular well wishes or regular sympathies, it never sounds like he actually wrote it because he is incapable of writing it without getting a little grievance in. And I'm sure Trump supporters will be mad at me for saying that, but also that's what you like about him. And it's what made him a great poster. Some of the funniest posters in the world are people who like Trump in his posting heyday can't make it 5 sentences without being mad about something unrelated. And I keep bringing up how he's gotten worse, and that's not just because I hate his politics and everything he stands for, but it's also because I think his style of posting is genuinely less funny when there are actual stakes to it. Extending his best wishes to the haters and losers generally is much, much funnier than him wishing Happy Easter and then putting out a list of grievances against corrupt prosecutors and Jack Smith and Fani Willis and all these real people. Haters and losers is general and low stakes, and this makes you think, Jesus Christ, the man can't wish people a happy Easter without complaining about Alvin Bragg? Like I suggested on the last episode I covered a Trump tweet, we really should have just made him the poster-in-chief in 2016, so he could post things like this on every serious holiday, and we could go, haha, Trump, talking about the haters and losers on a mournful day again. I miss that. We were robbed of that. And for the record, I still find it extremely funny that he tweeted this. I just know that if he tweeted it today, I'd have to be like, oh, damn, is he gonna try to punish the haters and losers if he wins again? And for the record, this is not the first time Donald Trump was callous about 9/11. In fact, he didn't wait until 9/12/2001 to be callous about 9/11. I don't know how many of you remember this from the 2016 campaign, but there was video unearthed from a local TV station where Donald Trump called in on 9/11 to talk about how since the Twin Towers fell, his building was now the tallest building in downtown Manhattan. And possibly the funniest thing about this to me is that that actually wasn't true. It wasn't the tallest building. There was still one taller. And his impulse to say that is why he can't do a tweet about 9/11 without talking about the haters and losers. To call him unfiltered, I think is inaccurate, because I think he actually does have a filter. His filter is asking, how do I make this about me and getting one up on my enemies? And that is extremely funny. A lot of the funniest characters in movies and TV shows have that exact same attitude. But it's so much funnier when it's about Bette Midler and Rosie O'Donnell and not undocumented immigrants in the entire trans community. Any political win for Donald Trump is a loss for posting. And I'm sure there are people rolling their eyes being like, oh my god, this guy who makes videos about funny tweets is now getting super serious, etc., etc. For one, there are a lot more important things in the world than funny tweets, so I can say whatever I want. And two, I really do mean what I'm saying about this from a posting perspective. He really has gotten less funny the more powerful he's gotten. Look, I'm not saying that I'm going to organize a posters for Kamala Zoom, but if there is one, I would like a speaking slot. Follow me for a new tweet every day, tweet the place for every previous entry, and I do extend my best wishes to everyone, including the people who want me to do tweets about streamers. I love you too. On September 22nd, 2022, Beck Shaw tweeted, The Last of Us, very smart putting Melanie Linsky in it to get me and all the homosexuals to watch. Melanie Linsky responded, Aw. Matt Oswald replied, Us heterosexuals like you too, Melanie. And Melanie Linsky responded, That's less exciting to me, Matt, but thank you nonetheless. This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. I feel like a very important part of being online is knowing that some conversations are not for you. For example, when someone says a particular actor is important to homosexuals, if you're a heterosexual, you don't need to tell them, hey, you're also important to heterosexuals. And the main context you need to understand here is that Melanie Linsky is an actress that you've no doubt seen in things, and this was tweeted after a trailer for the HBO series The Last of Us was released, where you saw Melanie Linsky in it. And Beck Shaw was trying to say that by showing Melanie Linsky was in it, HBO was courting a gay audience they might not have otherwise gotten. And after Melanie Linsky reacted positively to this, Matt Oswald, brother of Patton Oswald, butted in to say that, hey, us heterosexuals like you too. And depending on how you read it, Melanie Linsky's response is either extremely condescending, a light ribbing, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. And I'm not really sure where I fall in it, especially because there's a lot of context with Melanie Linsky, a lot of context with TV fandom online, so I reached out to a person I consider to be an expert on TV fandom and celebrity interactions on Twitter, Leah Marilla Thomas, who is a culture writer who you've seen at Cosmopolitan, Teen Vogue, and Vulture, etc. Leah, can you contextualize a little bit what Melanie Linsky means to a certain type of TV fan? Because I think that she's one of those people who is significantly more famous, the type of person who tweets about television, than she is to the mainstream American viewer.
Definitely, because she's a character actress, right? And she has, through shows like Castle Rock and Yellow Jackets, recently been doing this very unsuspecting badass type of character. But yeah, besides that, she's like, would she break out with Peter Jackson's movie and But I'm a Cheerleader, and well, these are all movies. So
well, no, but I mean, but you're right that these are all kind of niche things, and I think part of this conversation is about her relationship to the homosexuals.
She's very relaxed about it too. I think she talks about, I think, her own queerness in a way that we don't often see from Hollywood stars. It kind of reminds me of the Tom Hardy headline, the famous Tom Hardy headline, like, I'm an actor, of course I've had sex with men. Like, it's very that kind of like, yeah.
So in this conversation, people took this very much as like, oh, she's owning this guy. She's putting him down. This guy who, of course, is Patton Oswalt's Frank Stallone. I mean, Patton Oswalt's younger brother. So what's your take on it? Because I know that if you have the context of Melanie Linsky, I feel like you view it a little bit differently than if you just saw this randomly.
Oh, I definitely don't think that she was trying to insult him. I think she was making a joke. She has an incredibly dry sense of humor that we don't see that often. And also, she's from New Zealand, so if you imagine it in her like natural Kiwi accent, I think the tone comes across a little bit better. But I think she's just making a very matter-of-fact type of joke, which is why I like it.
I mean, my favorite example of her dry sense of humor is when, I forget when it was, when her husband, Jason Ritter, tweeted like a long thing about how much he loves her because he's a big wife guy for her. And it was shortly after the curvy wife guy thing. And she said, I kept trying to get him to tweet, I love my curvy wife, but he wouldn't do it.
They're so funny. She also tells a story, she's told it a couple of times, about how he loves to try to scare her in her home, and it just does not work. and he'll jump out at her, and she'll just be like, "What are you doing?"
So how do you feel about the fact, since you see it as a very dry sense of humor, how do you feel about it having, I says, in the wild, outside of like TV stan Twitter, I've seen this used as like this is someone getting owned on the internet. How does that make you feel?
Art is up to interpretation.
Yeah.
I think that's wrong, but you know what? Own the heterosexuals. Do it. Who cares?
Because I agree with you that she's not being like putting him down. I think she's kind of like lightly ribbing him. But I do think that Matt Oswald is kind of being a dumbass in it. I think he's being sincere in what he's saying.
I had not considered that before, so this is...
So you think that he's playing along with the joke too, or no?
I don't know now. Well, in that way, it's a very polite takedown, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that in and itself is kind of brilliant.
Yeah. Like, that's kind of the way I always would balance it, is like, it's he's kind of being like annoying, and she's like, I appreciate that very much too, but not as much, you know?
We're not talking about you, but thank you.
She's really just a very interesting figure, because like I said, I think if anyone on the street would have recognized her, it'd be like, oh, the crazy neighbor from 2.5 Men, but she has like a very rich and interesting career.
I forget, because I know her from Shattered Glass, first and foremost. That was like the first thing think I saw.
Can I ask you a question? Are you mad at me?
Yes. I don't respond to, are you mad at me? Well, and her character in Yellow Jackets is like a queer-coded show in a show with a lot of queer characters. So it's there's layers and levels to it.
So I think that the conclusion I think that we can reach with this is that it is simultaneously like a very funny moment, but it is not funny for the same reason that someone who just stumbles upon it would think it's funny, right? I really think the accent's the key, because I'm not going to do it, but if you read it in an accent, it's not as mean.
It's exciting. Mitt.
Yes. It's excited to be Mitt. Still, I'm going to get death threats from Kiwis. I want to thank Leah for joining me. You can follow her on all platforms at Leah Marilla, and if you're mad about the Kiwi accents, just be mad at me. And just to further how important this tweet was among a certain community, here are 2 reactions to this thread. That's so mother of her, and she did that for us. And this is just a clip I found in my research that made me laugh. This is Melanie Lindsay responding to the question of if gay people didn't like Yellow Jacket Season 2.
I would be devastated. Oh my god. If the gays turned on Yellow Jackets and said Season 2 is a mess, I'm not here for it, nothing would make me more upset.
She did that for them. Follow me for a new tweet every day and check the playlist for every previous entry. On December 9th, 2019, Stefan Molyneux tweeted, I can't believe Taylor Swift is about to turn 30. She still looks so young. It's strange to think that 90% of her eggs are already gone, 97% by the time she turns 40, so I hope she thinks about having kids before it's too late. She'd be a fun mom. This is the Museum of Twitter, the show we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. Okay, let me just say that this is the creepiest shit in the world, and I did not enjoy reading it. Because what the absolute hell is wrong with this guy? Before I answer that and get to other burning questions, let me explain why I'm doing this tweet now. Late Tuesday night, Taylor Swift endorsed Kamala Harris and called herself a childless cat lady in the process. To which Elon Musk tweeted, fine Taylor, you win. I will give you a child and guard your cats with my life. Which is also extremely creepy and also something I did not enjoy reading. But because I am Rain Man, except for dumb Twitter ephemera, my mind immediately went to the Stefan Molyneux tweet. And no, I do not like the fact that when I read this tweet I thought, wait, isn't there another famous tweet about a guy wanting Taylor Swift to get pregnant? But thankfully I'm not the only person with this particular brain disease, because these 2 other people also noticed the connection. And it's just so fucking weird. This is a pop star you don't know. Why are you obsessing over the amount of eggs in her ovaries, you lunatic? The answer to why he tweeted this lies in who he is. The Southern Poverty Law Center describes Stefan Molyneux as an alt-right podcaster who promotes things such as scientific racism, eugenics, non-white racial inferiority. He's been banned from a ton of sites on the internet, including YouTube. He was banned from Twitter in 2020, but of course when Elon Musk bought it, he was reinstated. And so if you're like me and unfortunately know how the alt-right and weird right-wing guys on the internet work, you can kind of tell where this is going. People like Molyneux are obsessed with people like Taylor Swift getting pregnant and having kids because they see every white woman who does not give birth to white children as a missed opportunity. They believe that other races of people are literally genetically inferior. And so by their logic, the duty of a white woman is just to pump out as many white kids as possible. Which is why it's notable, of course, that just a few days before Stefan tweeted this, Taylor Swift said that women are not merely incubators. But if you look at Stefan's tweet, he clearly does think that they're just incubators, because how else are you supposed to read a tweet where someone's talking about the number of eggs that a stranger stranger has, and not think that they think that the most important thing about that stranger is the amount of kids they can have. And you could say the same thing for Musk. For one, he's offended by the fact that she's childless, which is literally none of his business. But also, rather than saying like, hey, maybe you want to have kids, etc., he literally suggests putting a baby in her. And as many people pointed out, if you said this to a coworker, you would get fired faster than you can say X, the everything app. And it's especially creepy coming from Elon Musk because he's serious about this sort of thing. He goes on and on about his pro-natalism effort to try to make people have more babies. He wants to have as many babies as possible. He's had 3 kids with a Neuralink executive because he's so obsessed with his bloodline continuing, as if the world wants more people who look like him. And I feel like an elephant in the room here is that there clearly is some type of sexual component to this. I don't know what it is. I don't really want to guess because I don't want to think about it, but clearly there's something more going on with these guys obsessing over childless women getting pregnant than them just wanting the women to be happy or wanting more children in the world. If you were a woman and a guy on the street asked you your age and then told you how many eggs you had left in your body, you would assume that that guy was a predator. And the thing about this tweet is, the way it's worded is what makes me want to vomit. How, like, smarmy it is. The whole, I hope she thinks about having kids before it's too late. She'd be a fun mom, smiley face. Like, I want to take a shower. And in case you think Stefan is uniquely obsessed with Taylor Swift and all the other stuff I said about him, I'm just making up, and the Southern Poverty Law Center is just making up, he's also said it about other people, including politician Tulsi Gabbard. This man is just sitting somewhere in Canada imagining famous women pregnant. And when other people tweet like this, they're immediately compared to Stefan Molyneux. Like when Owen Benjamin said that Taylor Swift would be bad to date because she's 34 and can only have 2 kids if you started immediately. This guy Johnny Micro pointed out, very glad someone has picked up the mantle of Stefan Molyneux and worrying about the status of Taylor Swift's eggs. People like me with Twitter brain rot are still making jokes about the Stefan Molyneux tweet all the way into 2024. Like here when Cringe Expert posts a panel from a manga called Bloom Into You, where someone looks in a fridge and says, wow, it's full of eggs, but nothing else, they say, Stefan Molyneux thinking about Taylor Swift before she turned 30. If there's a lesson in all of this, and I don't think the lesson is as simple as don't tweet what Stefan Molyneux tweeted, because I don't think anyone who's watching is as deranged as him, but I think the lesson that's applicable to all of us is don't talk about the fertility of anyone who's not you or your partner, I guess. Whether you're having kids, when you're having kids, if you can have kids, is no one's business but your own. And from an internet perspective, I think it's always wise to be wary of any man who is obsessed with fertility. Like, yes, you could be an academic who studies declining birth rates, but that's not what I'm talking about. If you're someone who talks about women's decision not to have children and to delay having children in a way that you act like it's a moral panic, there's almost certainly something insidious going on. I'm sure they will deny it, but frankly, I've been on the internet too long to believe them. Follow me for a new tweet every day and tweet the playlist for every previous entry. On February 21st, 2007, the Los Angeles Chargers tweeted, P.F. Chang's is so good. This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. It's Sports Tweets Saturday, and let me quickly say before anyone freaks out that I am aware that there's a more famous Chargers P.F. Chang's tweet. It reads, so hungry, need to find my wife and head to P.F. Chang's. The reason I didn't read that one in the intro is because when you're awkwardly standing outside of P.F. Chang's in Manhattan, you want as few words to memorize as possible. But these tweets are both iconic and important and need to go in tandem. But obviously what you're wondering is, why did the official account for the Los Angeles Chargers, formerly the San Diego Chargers, tweet about P.F. Chang's twice in 2007? And thankfully for me, I don't need to remove my creamsicle Tampa Bay Buccaneers hat and put on my journalist hat, because the great Roger Sherman already investigated this question writing for SB Nation back in 2017. The basic answer is that the @Chargers account used to belong to Joel Price, someone who actually works on their digital team when Twitter was first starting up. I imagine he didn't think that Twitter would be that big of an app, so he just made the account @Chargers, maybe to squat on it, but he used it as his personal account in the meantime. And he didn't just use it to tweet about P.F. Chang's, he also deleted such insightful things as, going to bed, I must stop staying up so late, off to a late meeting, set up our team's MySpace page, this is a project I was going to do last year. I think this one is particularly interesting because it really puts a timestamp on when these tweets were tweeted. We really don't think about MySpace and Twitter overlapping in time because in terms of popularity, they really didn't. Twitter was really not that popular until 4 years after this was tweeted, but they were in existence at the same time. Now, it's not clear exactly who was the first person to realize that the Chargers had tweeted about P.F. Chang's back in 2007, but it's around 2014 that it became a thing. It was in late 2014 that Joel Price tweeted from his personal Twitter account that P.F. Chang sent the Chargers digital team lettuce wraps as a token of appreciation for the tweets. And since then, the Chargers official account has really run with P.F. Chang's as a meme. They've tweeted about the anniversary of the P.F. Chang's tweet multiple times. And when their new coach Jim Harbaugh was hired, they celebrated learning the anecdote that he apparently met his wife in the parking lot of a P.F. Chang's. And as you can imagine, the Chargers social media team are not the only people to make jokes about P.F. Chang's. Dan McQuaid here pointed out that when the Chargers moved from San Diego to Los Angeles, they actually were moving further away from a P.F. Chang's. And since the Chargers have changed stadiums since Dan tweeted that, I wanted to see if it was still true, and it is. The Chargers are 20 minutes from a P.F. Chang's, and that P.F. Chang's is, of course, in LAX, so it's probably much longer because they'd have to go through security just to get that great P.F. Chang's. And if you're wondering about my personal opinion on P.F. Chang's, I'm pretty pro. As someone who has celiac disease and whose mom has celiac disease, it was a restaurant we went to a pretty good amount as a family growing up because they were one of the first chains to offer lots of gluten-free options on their menu. Obviously, it's not real Chinese food, but when you grow up in Southwest Florida and want to get loaded on sodium, it's a good place to go. In fact, I ate at P.F. Chang's the day I recorded that intro. I had a gift card, so I took my friend Springthorpe, the gay correspondent on the show, and my friend David there, and we had a wonderful lunch. This is not an ad for P.F. Chang's, but I do always like to shout out a chain restaurant I like, because like I said, I grew up in Southwest Florida, so my experience with restaurants was a lot of chain restaurants, so I have a lot of opinions on which ones are actually good and which ones are actually bad. And I have two final thoughts about these tweets. I think the biggest thing I want people to take away is, like, how basic Twitter was in 2007. Now, I wasn't on there at the time, but I've seen tweets from back then, and it really was as simple as people just telling you that they were having lunch, that they were getting up, that they were going to bed. Not that people didn't keep doing that for the next few years, but it was so much more of like a micro-blogging site where people were literally giving you minute-by-minute updates on what they were doing, which is, I think, why it was mocked so much when it first came around. And one of my favorite football-related details of the Chargers being the one to tweet about P.F. Chang's is that their division rival, the Oakland Raiders, is owned by a man named Mark Davis, who has the worst haircut known to man. In addition to having that bad haircut, he also has been known to go to the bar at P.F. Chang's after losses and drink, read the newspaper, just be a rich guy at a bar, but that bar is P.F. Chang's. On the one hand, like, why would you choose that as your bar if you're a billionaire? But on the other hand, I don't know how many other bars have lettuce wrap, so Godspeed, Mark.
Fall for a new tweet every day and check the playlist for every previous entry.
And wait, next week is Drill Week. Starting Monday the 16th and going all the way till next Sunday is 7 straight days of drill tweets. Don't recommend your favorites because I already have 7 picked out, but it's going to be exciting, and get ready. On September 15, 2021, freshhel tweeted, "Oh my god, you only had an iced coffee to eat today? Should we tell everyone? Should we throw a party? Should we invite Bella Hadid?" This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. Twitter is a place where people share stuff that's not that interesting or important all the time, so the phrase, "should we invite Bella Hadid?" has become very helpful. Now, this tweet is not originally about annoying people generally. It's about one type of person, the type of person who insists on telling you that they just had a nice coffee to eat today. And I think what Helena gets at here is the fact that you're like, what am I supposed to do with that information? Okay, you didn't eat breakfast. Are you complaining about it? Are you bragging that you just had a nice coffee? Like, what am I supposed to do with this information? And the reason why this tweet took off and became an important part of the Twitter lexicon is because she doesn't just say, what am I supposed to do with that information? She comes up with hypothetical questions. Should we tell everyone? Should we throw a party? Should we invite Bella Hadid? By asking these questions, she's sort of teasing the person who said that they just had a nice coffee today by saying, like, okay, if it's so important, why don't we get superstar model Bella Hadid involved? And if you're new here, you might be asking, wait, is he explaining the joke? And the answer is yes, that's what I do here. That's what my purpose is on this app. You can go find other accounts. And as you no doubt know if you've used Twitter in the last 3 years, should we invite Bella Hadid has become a response to any time someone shares information that's not important. And before I go through examples, I want to know what Helena felt about this, about the fact that a thing that she randomly tweeted became an important part of the Twitter lexicon. So I reached out to her, and she got back to me with this video.
Hello, I'm Helena. I wrote the "should we invite Bella Hadid" tweet. I don't have a ton to say about it other than, like, I think it is very odd to, like, see something you, like, typed at a gas station become, like, a thing people say. That is a really strange phenomenon. Love it. I really like it. I think it's cool. You know, I think it's sometimes the, like, meme of it is employed in ways where I'm like, why are you using my cool thing to, like, be a dork? But that's fine. Yeah, it's not really my thing anymore, to be fair. I remember, like, when I tweeted it, a few people were like, oh my god, you're making fun of people with eating disorders. And I was like, obviously not the intention of the tweet. And if you think that that is what I was trying to accomplish with that string of sentences, you are annoying and you have to change. And fuck Elon Musk. Bye.
Thanks, Elena. And I do find it interesting that she's the second person who I've talked to about an iconic tweet that admits that the phrase that was invented is not really theirs anymore. I think that that's just an interesting thing. And of course, I have examples of it being used. Here, Gretchen Felker Martin says, oh my god, you're AFAB? Should we tell everyone? Should we throw a party? Should we invite Bella Hadid? Here, Chris says, oh my god, you're an introvert who had a deep conversation today? Should we tell everyone? Should we throw a party? Should we invite Bella Hadid? And I feel like here is the quintessential use of should we invite Bella Hadid. Here, Charlotte says, I'm so sorry, but I'm never going to listen to the Sabrina Carpenter album, but God bless you. And Fast Nights quotes and says, should we tell everyone, should we throw a party, should we invite Bella Hadid? The reason I think this is the quintessential use is because it's not just that the information is unimportant. It's not important to strangers that she's not going to listen to the new Sabrina Carpenter album, but she phrases it in such a way like she's making a big announcement, like it is important, like it is something that should be announced to people. And to be clear, I don't think should we invite Bella Hadid should be used as a way to shut down criticism of popular things. There is a way to criticize Sabrina Carpenter or say you don't listen to Sabrina Carpenter without warranting a should we invite Bella Hadid. Because as Helena said, there absolutely is a way to use should we invite Bella Hadid to be a dork. Now, I'm not going to go through examples of people using it incorrectly because I don't really want to speak for Helena for what she meant by that, but it definitely has been used to quiet criticisms of big pop stars or big movies or things like that, and I think that that's not what her intention was. Okay, I feel comfortable using this one because the MCU is in my purview because I do a podcast on it. I just feel like listening to Helena and hearing her argument, I don't think that she meant should we invite Bella Hadid as a way to quiet criticism of Deadpool and Wolverine. Especially because this tweet is not reacting to anything, there's nothing being quoted, so I feel like if you kind of just bring it up apropos of nothing, you're kind of being the annoying one. You really don't have the right to say should we invite Bella Hadid. The thing I found pretty funny is how quickly this took off. I mean, I found this post from just a few days later where someone did the distracted boyfriend meme but about an iced coffee, and someone already was responding with should we invite Bella Hadid. And while it's used to comment on a lot of different things, it still is associated with iced coffee. Last month, 2 different people jokingly asked about Bella Hadid when they were talking about only having eaten an iced coffee, and this did make me laugh. Someone pointed out that this exchange in the film Uptown Girls is the original Let's Invite Bella Hadid. If there is a lesson to this tweet, I think it's just be conscious of how important to other people the things you're saying are. It's not a crime to tell people that you've only eaten an iced coffee today, but it is extremely annoying to act like that's information that they really care about. And the same thing with posts on Twitter. If you don't want to listen to the new Sabrina Carpenter album, frankly, you can just keep that to yourself. Like, no one cares what you're not listening to. But if you want to share it, you can say, hey, Sabrina Carpenter is not really the artist for me, but I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. You don't need to make it like you're making a proclamation about something important. And oh, you think I yap too much on these videos? Should we tell everyone? Should we throw a party? Should we invite Bella Hadid? Follow for a new tweet every day and tweet the playlist for a previous entry. And tomorrow, Drill Week starts. From Monday to Sunday, it's going to be 7 straight tweets by tweeter Drill. I already have the 7 picked out, so apologies I'm not taking recommendations right now, but please tune in, please share, please enjoy, starting tomorrow. On December 28th, 2014, Drill tweeted, and another thing, I'm not mad. Please don't put in the newspaper that I got mad. This is the Museum of Twitter, the show we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. It's Drill Week, people, and we're starting off with a classic. Well, all 7 I picked are classic, but we're starting off with a classic. I felt like this was a good one to pick because I think it pairs well with the introductory stuff I want to talk about with Drill. If you're one of the people who watches the show that never really use Twitter and you're wondering, who is Drill? I don't really have a great answer for you, except to say that he is probably the most influential and important shitposter in the history of Twitter. And shitposter is not really fair because his impact is much greater than that, but it is kind of what he is at heart, and I don't think he'd be offended with that label. And who he actually is a matter of public knowledge. It's on his Wikipedia page, but I'm not going to go into that, not because I really care about keeping the mystique of him as an artist. Frankly, I find any artist that really values being enigmatic to be kind of lame, but just because it's not that interesting. He is exactly the type of person you would imagine making a shitpost account on Twitter. And I don't say that to cast aspersions. The type of person I'm talking about is basically me. But Drill has been on Twitter forever, and he's always been at Drill. He's always had the blurry photo of Jack Nicholson as his avatar. He originally started posting as Drill on the somethingawful.com forums, which is a little bit before my time on the internet. But yeah, he regularly posts with a sort of absurdist, semi-ironic, semi-satirical bent. It's really hard to define what a Drill tweet is, but if you spend any time on Twitter, you know what a Drill tweet is. And that's why I think this is a good tweet to start with, because it shows that a lot of Drill tweets are sort of mocking a type of annoying person. Like, the Drill character is someone who is always put upon by his wife, by his sons, by the world, and he is the type of person to complain not to put it in the newspaper that he got mad. And that's why this tweet is so important in the Drill canon. It's so applicable to so many different people, particularly on the internet. Because the obvious thing here is that the moment you start complaining that you're not mad, and it shouldn't go in the newspaper that you're mad, you're making it really obvious that you're mad. It's basically the internet version of the old southern phrase, a hit dog will holler. And if there's anything the internet is full of, it is lots of people insisting through gritted teeth that they are not mad. It's been applied to Elon Musk many, many times, like here when he was complaining about revenue being down because advertisers were being pressured by leftist groups or whatever. Or here when he was in Stephen King's mentions because Stephen King had the gall to joke about advertisers leaving Twitter. This person also called Musk a corncob, which is a reference to another Drill tweet I'll be doing later this week. It really applies to a specific type of person, like here when someone says it about Nicki Minaj, where Nicki Minaj has a tweet where she is basically begging the newspaper not to say that she got mad. It applies to sports as well, where in this last postseason, the Indiana Pacers lodged a formal complaint over some referee calls, which is the technical equivalent of saying, don't put in the newspaper that I got mad. And sometimes players come out and basically say it, like when Josh Hart said to make sure we tweet he is not a disgruntled player. I love you, Josh. And yes, before you typed in the comments, I will do Josh Hart's milk tweet at some point. Now, the elephant in the room here is that it's really applicable to politics, particularly Republican politicians these days. And if you follow Dril and you follow politics, you know what I'm leading up to. A few weeks ago, the Kamala Harris campaign used this tweet in a press release talking about one of Donald Trump's press conferences. In that press conference, he was really complaining about Kamala taking over for Biden, but also was insisting that it was fine and whatever. And if you follow Dril and can read even a little bit between the lines of his posts, you could probably guess that he would not be that happy about the Harris campaign using this tweet. I'm not going to pin down the politics of a man I don't know, but he definitely has far left politics, further left than the mainstream Democratic Party. His initial response to this was to bring up sexual crimes happening in IDF prison camps. And when he was interviewed by Rolling Stone about it, he said that he didn't think it was appropriate to use because if this election's really about determining if 1 billion toddlers are going to get bombed, it's appropriate to get mad and you shouldn't mad shame your opponent. Specifically, he said that when he did the tweet, he had, quote, more petty issues in mind. First and foremost, I don't want the comment section of this video to break out in a debate over whether this is the appropriate response. I just felt like I had to devote time to it since it's something that's so recent and is one of the most impactful things that's ever happened with a Dril tweet. As for me, I'm genuinely of two minds of it. For one, I feel like Dril does have the right to be bitter over a campaign he might not agree with, using something he wrote in a way he doesn't agree with. That is always an artist's prerogative. But my second thought is, and once again, this does not supersede the first part, Dril can be mad no matter what. But my second thought is that what he is saying would make sense if the stuff that Trump was mad about were the serious issues. But unfortunately, the reality with Trump is that Trump is mad about the petty stuff. Even though he is a very powerful person, the stuff he's complaining about in his press conferences is super petty. So I kind of do think that the tweet is applicable. Do I think that the Harris campaign should have used it? Like, no, because anyone who knows anything about Dril could have predicted that he would not have been happy, but Trump is always saying, don't put in the newspaper that I got mad. And he never really is talking about the important issues. He is talking about the dumb grievances that Dril was probably thinking about when he tweeted in 2014. But the thing is, I do agree with Dril that there's a significant difference between a random Twitter account quote tweeting Trump's press conference with that tweet and the official Harris campaign sending out a press release with it. Speaking of random people using it as a tweet, the Tim Walz attack of Republicans being weird inspired a lot of please don't put in the newspaper that I got mad type tweets. Vivek Ramaswamy wants to make it very clear that he is not mad that you called him weird and you should not put in the newspaper that he's mad that you called him weird. When known Russian asset Tim Pool literally said, I have never been mad at Democrats calling me weird. I'm trying to be as weird as possible every day. As soon as Dems ran the line weird, I was ecstatic and doubled down. You could not be telling the newspaper not to put it in there that you got mad more than this tweet. And this one's not a politician, but it's so pathetic I really do have to put it here. So long story short, this guy Chris Palmer, he is an NBA writer who tweeted that Kamala Harris is the least qualified person to do anything, which I'm sure is not true because I'm less qualified to be president than Kamala Harris is, so we know that that's not true. But anyway, a lot of people on NBA Twitter got mad at him for that, and he got in fights with them, but eventually it all ended with him tweeting, I literally don't care, you go to the polls, and let me know how it works out. I'll be in the pool, talking to supermodels, who don't care either. Understandably, people quoted this with the Dril tweet, because man, I believe this guy Bill Shakespeare said a thing about doth protesting too much. I think this is a really perfect one because it's actually the one that sounds most like a Dril tweet. Bringing up supermodels in the pool to talk about how little you care is the type of thing that Dril would tweet. And so one last thing I want to cover in this episode, even though this episode's already going long, but I want to get this done in the first episode of Dril Week, is the question of whether or not Dril sold his account. This is a thing that a lot of people on Twitter have said. They say that Dril is not funny anymore because he sold his account to someone else a few years ago. There are pieces of evidence I want to cite, but my answer to the question immediately is of course not. The idea that he sold his account just because you find him less funny is ludicrous. That's like saying that your favorite band sold their songwriting rights because you think their 7th album is worse than their 2nd. Like, even if we grant that Dril is less funny, people become less funny over time. You think about how long he's been tweeting. He's been tweeting since like 2008. He's now like a man in his late 30s probably. Maybe he just is not as funny as he used to be. It happens. And there is a capital G great Medium post from someone named Pidge01, who frankly, if I had found this before the day before I needed to post this, I would have reached out to maybe have her on. She went through all of Dril's tweets to really try to answer this question, and the evidence she found was, of course, it's the same person. There's actual digital evidence, like how his voice from like 2017 matches the voice he uses on his Twitch account today, but the thing that she really went through was his tweets and compared to see if you could tell the difference between how funny they are from 2011 to 2021. And she actually made a game to prove this point. It's on a website called diddrilchangewriters.com, and basically what it challenges you to do is to try to identify a year that Dril tweeted something, or you can see, did he tweet it before, say, 2016 or after 2016. In theory, if Dril really did change writers in like 2020, you could set the year on 2020 and correctly guess whether a tweet was tweeted before 2020 or after 2020. And having done it, No, you can't. Like everything that tries to be funny, people have been saying that Drill's account is no longer funny since 2017. He even joked about selling his account back then. Of course people think that Drill's tweets from 2011 to 2014 are better than his tweets now. They see all of his tweets now, but they really only remember the great tweets from 2011 to 2014. It's like when people try to tell you that the first SNL season is uniquely great. Like, yes, there are some really funny groundbreaking sketches, but like every other season of SNL, most of the sketches are, okay. And it is worth noting, as friend of the show Cohen says here, that the whole rumor about him selling his account started because conservatives were mad that he got woke. And I think more than anything, the thing that offends me about this whole conspiracy is that it doesn't have any evidence of anything. Like, if there was a person that they think he sold it to, if there was a reason that they think that the guy whose name we know sold the account, if there was a monetary reason he would sell it, because famously, Dril has said many times that he can't really monetize the account, because what are you going to sell from Dril? Drill's not going to be advertising shit on his account. So, because none of those things are there, it just becomes a way people complain that his account is less funny. And you're allowed to do that. You can just say that you don't like his account as much. You don't need to come up with a conspiracy that this guy sold his account. It's one of my least favorite internet things, where people come up with a conspiracy to try to explain something that is very obviously explainable with just normal human life. To go back to my band analogy, just because the Rolling Stones don't make good music like they used to does not mean that Mick Jagger was replaced. And that is the last I will say on that topic. I did not necessarily want to mire this tweet with that conversation, but I knew if I didn't get it out of the way on Monday, people would be asking the entire week, and as you can tell by my demeanor, and by the fact that I'm sweating more than I was at the beginning of the episode, I find the conversation extremely tiresome. Oh, and another thing, I'm not mad about people saying Dril sold his account. Please don't put in the newspaper that I got mad about people saying Dril sold his account. Make sure you follow, we got 6 more days of Dril Week, and also, if your favorite Dril tweet is not featured in Dril Week, don't worry, this does not mean that other Dril tweets won't be featured in the future. This is just a whole week of Dril. Please follow. On September 29, 2013, Dril tweeted, food, $200, data, $150, rent, $800, candles, $3,600, utility, $150. Someone who is good at the economy, please help me budget this. My family is dying. This is the Museum of Twitter, the show we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. It is the second day of Dril Week, and we have another iconic post. A post so iconic, it's just known as the candles tweet. At the risk of being the most obvious person alive, there's just something so funny about him spending so much money on candles. And I can't really put into words why candles are the perfect object for him to be blowing his money on, but they just are. It's not like a collectible, it's not like a weird hobby, it's not vacations, it's candles. What is he doing with all of these candles? And how does one spend $3,600 on candles a month? Even if you're buying really nice candles, are you buying a couple dozen candles a month? And the thing is, he's not just bragging about his budget, he is trying to get help. As he says at the end of the tweet, he's looking for someone who's good at the economy to help him budget because his family is dying. And if you're sitting there thinking, oh my god, he can just spend less money on candles, that was suggested to him and he's not having any of it. So I wanted to take his request seriously. I wanted to find someone who is good at the economy to help him budget. So I reached out to Joey Politano, who writes a data-driven economics newsletter at apricitas.io. I might be mispronouncing that, I forgot to ask. And so I discussed with Joey, someone who is undoubtedly good at the economy, how Dril can solve his budget issues. So Joey, you are an economics writer, and Dril specifically asked for someone who's good at the economy to help him budget. So do you have any ideas, any suggestions of how he could budget better?
Yeah, so I think if you take a really quick look at this, there's a very, very obvious way for Dril to fix his budget. And that's first off by cutting down on utility spending. You could probably get that down to $0 because with about $3,600 worth of candles, that should cover your heating needs for the month, just leaving them on all the time. And secondarily, there's $150 a month spent on data. And you really don't need data if you have $3,600 a month worth of candles because you could just sort of use shadows on the wall as your entertainment and connection to the outside world. And with that, you're really saving $300, which in this economy, that doesn't go too far, but you could afford like almost a 10% increase in candle spending with that amount of money.
And I think that you're thinking out of the box in a way that I think he's really looking for, because, you know, obviously other people have responded about cutting down on the candles and he's not really open to that. But this is, I think, the sort of thing that a lot of millennials could do if they want to buy houses, you know, this sort of out of the box thinking of how to save money.
Right. This is very like, there's a lot of coastal elites who come in and tell you that you need to spend less on candles, and they don't really know what the modern economy looks like for someone under the age of 30. Like $3,600 worth of candles, that's like barely getting by if we're thinking about it, honestly.
Exactly. This tweet was originally tweeted in 2013, and now obviously there's been a lot of talk about inflation these days. How do you feel like, you know, because $3,600 worth of candles is not the same as it used to be. So how do you feel like that is affecting Dril's budget and what he's able to do with the candles?
I do agree $3,600 worth of candles isn't what it used to be, but I think we also need to look back at like the pandemic era 2020, 2021 economy, you couldn't even get candles then. And then you had this sort of supply glut of candles because there were so many people who couldn't smell. They weren't buying candles for a while. So you had this really moment of acute shortage and then acute surplus.
You know what? That actually
and
makes
it's
me
just
think.
great to get back.
That makes me think. Dril, you have to imagine, never had to spend money on a COVID test. Because if he couldn't smell his candles, he knew.
This is true. And really, then you could cut back on healthcare spending, and you're saving all the uses for candles, just endless.
Yeah, if there's anything we can take away from this, it's that, like, the word need is used a lot, I think, by younger people. I need this, I need my phone, I need my iced latte. But, like, what do you really need, you know?
$3,600 worth of candles.
Exactly. I really want to thank Joey for coming on. It's not every day an economics writer who is just at the White House gets a DM asking to go onto a TikTok show to talk about the Dril Candles tweet, and it's definitely not every day that they say yes. If you've been on Twitter for any length of time, you know that the Dril Candles tweet is referenced a lot. The repeated example that I always think of is whenever there are those articles in, like, the New York Times where it's someone being like, I make $200,000 a year, and I can't survive with my family in the city. And then you look through their expenses, and they're sending their kid to a super expensive private school and getting them private tutoring. And I want to be clear that sending your kid to a private school is absolutely worth it, if you want to raise a socially maladjusted weirdo. And people will bring it up anytime there's anything that's super expensive, like the new PS5 upgrade. And people will parody it across all different contexts, like here when Allison uses it to make fun of cryptocurrency by saying, rent, $1,700, groceries, $390, ETH gas fees, $928,000, utilities, $150, investments, $500. Basically, you can plug anything that you think is overpriced and not worth it into the candle slot of the Dril tweet. Now, a thing that Fire Holly or Fire Helly pointed out in 2023 that I didn't know is that this Dril tweet is actually based on a somethingawful.com forum post from back in the day. Or at least it seems like it. I don't know for sure if the guy who writes Dril saw this post, but I definitely will believe it. Basically, this guy made a post asking for help on his budget, and when he laid out all of his budget items, it kind of stuck out that his mortgage was the most expensive thing, but the second most expensive item was miscellaneous. And when he broke down the miscellaneous stuff, and I'm not going to go through it because it's a long forum, it was stuff that he didn't really need. It obviously was not as egregious as spending $3,600 on candles, but knowing that Dril was a somethingawful.com poster, it would make sense that he'd see that and then kind of turn it up to 11 or 12 in a tweet. In the spirit of topicality, Man Nuclear Bomb pointed out that this budget, with $3,600 for candles, is Allison's budget for King's Landing. Once again, I do not watch House of the Dragon, but I understand that this is funny. And a sobering thing that Eric Baker pointed out that I'm sure many of you realize is that in today's economy, if Dril were to reallocate all of his candles budget to rent, he still might not be able to afford an apartment in a lot of major cities. And you have to imagine that his budget is even tighter these days. And you can mock him all you want, but I hope that he does get the advice he needs from someone who's good at the economy, because his family's dying. There are 5 more days left in Dril Week, so please follow. And keep in mind, if I don't cover your favorite Dril tweet this week, I will cover it in the future. Don't worry, this is not the end of Dril on this show. On February 15, 2017, Dril tweeted, issuing correction on a previous post of mine regarding the terror group ISIL. You do not, under any circumstances, gotta hand it to them. This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. It's day 3 of Dril Week, and wouldn't you know it, it's another banger. Because on its face, it's an incredibly funny post, and it's also extremely applicable to a lot of other types of posts. Every day on the internet, you will see people saying, gotta hand it to them, about people they absolutely do not gotta hand it to. But first, let's look at why the Dril version is so funny. I think first and foremost, the fact that he says ISIL instead of ISIS is just one of those stylistic things that is funnier, even though I can't articulate why. And it's really funny how it's in like the tone of a press release, like someone was like, hey Dril, you gotta issue an apology. Corporate says that we do not gotta hand it to the terror group ISIL. And part of the humor is imagining in what context Dril said, gotta hand it to them about the terror group ISIL. And if you're like, Jake, there's no context in which any person would say, gotta hand it to them about ISIS. You'd be wrong, of course, because President Trump did that in 2019. He said, gotta hand it to them about how good they are at using the internet. And he did have to issue an apology that is a lot like this Dril tweet. And this is not a particularly new phenomenon. People would praise Mussolini for making the trains run on time long before the internet. But there is a certain type of poster, and I think a lot of posters are secretly like this, that just really wants to find the angle where it's okay to praise something that everyone else finds bad. There's something seductive about the forbidden take that, well, this group was actually good in this one way. Like, you do not gotta hand it to Trump for getting the public more interested in politics. You do not gotta hand it to COVID-19 for exposing the sheep among us. And according to all the people that got mad at this person, you do not gotta hand it to Lin-Manuel Miranda about anything. One of the times I've seen this tweet referenced the most is in regards to Buffalo Bills coach Sean McDermott. Why? Why? Because a journalist revealed that as a way of trying to have his team have better teamwork, Sean McDermott used the 9/11 hijackers as an example of good teamwork. This is not a joke. This is a thing that happened and he had to apologize for. Now, I was curious if I had to hand it to Sean McDermott, because maybe his comments did actually inspire his team to work with better teamwork. So I asked my friend Hunter, who's the biggest Bills fan in my life, and this is what he said. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I do not think they, the comments, were a contributing factor to the team's success in any substantial way. You do not gotta hand it to him. But I really do feel like Sean McDermott's comments are a perfect microcosm of the you gotta hand it to him effect. Because your brain really has to be doing gymnastics to be thinking about 9/11 and then be like, you know what? Those guys had really good teamwork. Like, if you made me a professional football coach and asked me to come up with an example of good teamwork, I would spend days, weeks, if not months, going through many, many examples before I got to any terror attack. But the thing is, in a lot of people, there is that impulse to try to find the one good nugget in something bad. It's what made wide receiver Deshaun Jackson post a Hitler quote on Instagram during the summer of 2020. And I think some people that do this are just being dumb, but I really do think that there's a way that some people who are not completely dumb, but not really smart, think that if they can thread the needle, if they can make the point that this awful group or this awful person did one good thing, then they'll get, like, smart points. They'll get unbiased points. They'll be like, wow, you can see through how bad the public perception is of this person, but you can see that they did one good thing. That makes you more unbiased than the rest of us. And so while the tone of the original tweet is like a parody of a press release, I think the lesson is absolutely true. You do not gotta hand it to ISIL. When Henry Kissinger dies and everyone is talking about how much they hated him, you do not have to say, well, it was more nuanced, we shouldn't be so mean. And I'm not arguing that the world has no nuance, but most people, correctly, don't really want to hear a nice thing about the terror group ISIL. Even if it's true, you don't need to say it, because what you don't want to do is be the person who wishes a sex criminal good luck at the Olympics. Seriously, you never need to hand it to anyone, under any circumstances. 3 tweets down in Drill Week, 4 to go, make sure you follow along. On November 10th, 2011, Drill tweeted, I'm not owned, I continue to insist as I slowly shrink and transform into a corn cob. This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. It's still Drill Week, people, so we got another great drill tweet today. And this tweet is for everyone out there who wants to post through it and insist that they didn't get owned. Because this tweet is from 2011, and one thing has not changed about the internet, and particularly Twitter, at all. People will never log off when they're getting owned. And they will never admit to being owned. They will say anything under the sun before admitting that they got owned. They will shrink and transform into a corn cob before admitting that they got owned. But what makes this tweet have staying power? Anyone could make a joke about people not logging off when they're getting owned. The obvious answer is the corn cob part. What the hell does he mean by that? Truly, I looked it up. I was thinking, is there some reference I'm missing? Is there a thing to do with corn cobs that I just don't know, that I've been missing this entire time? But as far as I can tell, he just invented that idea whole cloth. I really don't have anything more articulate to say about it other than that's the magic of drill. I feel like no one else on earth would have ever thought to compare someone getting owned and not admitting to it to a cob of corn. But once drill did it, it's like, oh my god, that's the perfect comparison. It makes so much sense. Now, of course, it makes no literal sense, but it just feels so right. When you see someone just posting through it, insisting they're right when they're clearly not, you can just imagine them in your mind's eye, turning yellow, shriveling up, little kernels coming out of them. And calling someone a corn cob is just so dismissive in a perfect way. It's just a perfect response to someone threading like 20 tweets of nonsense to say, oh geez, he went full corn cob. Now, I'm not really going to go into this because I don't think it's that interesting and I don't feel like relitigating it, but early on in the use of corn cob, when it was really used in this context, even though it was tweeted in 2011, it really picked up steam in like 2017, it was used by people who were known, and still kind of are known as, the dirtbag left to describe centrist politicians. And a lot of people on Twitter did not know what corn cob meant, because I guess they don't follow drill, which in that case, why are you even on Twitter, but whatever. And so they thought that it was a homophobic term because that's what Urban Dictionary from 2012 said. Or they just didn't know what it was at all and said, what is binch? What is it to be corn cobbed? In this way, the corn cob comparison making no sense is actually an asset, because there's a good chance that the person you're accusing of being a corn cob has no idea what it means, and that just makes them more angry. Now, obviously, this tweet is somewhat similar to the don't put it in the newspaper that I got mad tweet that I covered earlier this week, but I think there are some unique elements to it, especially the way that it is used online. And I also think there's an element of self-denial to it. I feel like if you're just completely lying just to other people, you're not really turning into a corn cob. Part of turning into a corn cob is saying that you're not owned over and over again in the hopes that you will also believe it. Like, take Elon Musk. The man is a human corn cob at this point. But when he tweeted, I've overcome the desire to be liked, he was corn cobbing because I think in a lot of ways, he is trying to convince himself of that. The laughing emoji suggests that this is a deeper pain than just a lie. Or if we look at Matt Iglesias here, he insists that the reason why people were mad at him for something he said is because they misinterpreted it, as opposed to the thing he said just being stupid. Classic corncob behavior. A great example I found when I was searching through Twitter is that David Rudnick tweeted in 2019, "I see Brexit Britain has arrived at the stage of shrieking, 'I'm not owned, I'm not owned,' where it has appointed the corncob prime minister." Basically saying that post-Brexit Britain was so unwilling to admit that they got owned, that they made a mistake, that they went full corncob and made Boris Johnson the prime minister. And I really like that example because I think it demonstrates that going full corncob is the last step in refusing to admit you made a mistake. Look, no one likes being owned, and people definitely don't like admitting that they got owned, but I think the corncob tweet and all the times it's been used show that it is always better to just own up to it and log off than it is to go full corncob. I know this is somewhat silly, but I do mean this seriously. People are much more likely to remember your mistake if you go full corncob about it than if you just say, "Hey, that was my bad," and move on. Once you say, I'm not owned," there will just be the stench of corn on you for a long time. Like, I didn't have a high opinion of Matt Taibbi to begin with, but when he started a tweet with, "No, I will not take the L," that got burned in my brain forever, and that's what I'll always think about when I think about him. And seriously, it is my solemn promise to you that if I ever make a mistake, if I ever do something stupid, I'll admit to it, I'll say I got owned, etc., etc. I refuse to turn into a corncob on this app or on any other app. That's day 4 of Drill Week in the books, and you know what? I'm looking at my page, I see that I have almost 1 million likes when I'm recording this, and if I get to 1 million likes before the end of the week, I mean, I might be there by the time you're watching this, I'll do an 8th day of Drill Week. How about that? Stay tuned.